here to have a public hearing on LD 1733. So before we begin, why don't we start with introductions? And I know I'm just going to say right off the bat that Senator Bailey is listening, but not able to sign on with her camera right now. So I'm going to skip over her. But Representative Cloutier, would you mind starting? I can't hear you, Representative Cloutier. I think you're on mute. Representative Fay, do you want to start? And we'll try to get Representative Cloutier here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will say, I've noticed that the internet seems to be pretty intermittent right now because everybody keeps freezing and then coming back. So I'll make this quick. I'm Representative Jessica Fair, represent House District 66, which is parts of the towns of Casco, Poland, and Raymond.
Thank you. Representative Arata.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Amy Arata, and I represent House District 65, which includes New Gloucester and part of Poland. And I just want to say what a pleasure it was to be back with my committee in person this morning. And I really look forward to working with you all on this bill and on a bipartisan budget. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Representative Cloutier, you want to try again? We didn't hear you the first time because you were on mute. Maybe she's frozen. But now I see her blinking.
I think our headphones aren't working, so she's trying to fix that.
Okay, all right. Representative Millett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. Soen Millett, House District 71, Norway, Sweden, Waterford, and West Paris.
Great. Senator Davis.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Davis. I represent Senate District 4, which is all of Piscataquis County and parts of Somerset and Penobscot.
Wonderful. Chair Pearce.
Hello, I'm Teresa Pearce, House District 44, the majority of Falmouth, and I'm pleased to serve as the House Chair of AFA.
Great. And I just got a message from Representative Cloutier that she's ready to go and introduce herself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Kristen Cloutier. I represent House District 60, which is part of my hometown of Lewiston.
Wonderful, thank you. And I am Kathy Breen. I represent 6.5 communities in Cumberland County in the Maine Senate, and I serve as Senate Chair of Appropriations. We have also with us today Maureen Dawson, our analyst, and our wonderful clerk, Marianne McMaster. And I'm hoping this is going to be our very last gathering on Zoom, at least for this year. This is the last public hearing that we're going to hold, and from now on, we'll be doing our work in our committee room in the building, which we, as Representative Arata mentioned, we did this morning on a work session. So this will be a bit of a marathon because it's a public hearing on LD 1733. So I'll open the public hearing now. We have about 50 people signed up. We'll be running a 3-minute clock, and my co-chair and I will take turns timing folks. And I'm going to do my best to let in legislators, as we have a tradition of doing. So I think what I will do is start out by asking folks if there are any. I'm going to move over and look at the attendee list and ask if there are any legislators on here. If you would please raise your electronic hand so I can make sure I get to you as quickly as possible. I'm not seeing any at the moment, but that could change. So I think what I'll do is start first with Ann Danforth. I'm going to move her over now, and then Annie Talikas, and then Annie Watson. So Ann, Annie, and Annie, I'm going to move all three of you over right now, and then Ann Danforth can start. So hang on. Actually, I don't seem to be able to move her over yet. Maybe I need to be made host. I think, Mary Ann, can you help me with that so I can move people over from attendee to panelist? Oh, here we go.
And Marianne, can you make me a host as well, please? This is Representative Peirce. Thank you.
Both should be good.
Thank you. Caitlin Bernard, I see that you have your hand up. Could you come on and tell me what you need? Caitlin, are you there?
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me, but I cut out for a minute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
You have your hand up.
I'm trying to find.
Hang on, Caitlin. I zoomed you in because you had your hand up. Is there something you need my attention for something? Because I haven't called on you yet for testimony. Okay, just raising my hand to testify. Okay, so I will. We will get to Caitlin Bernard in a moment, but for now, we have Representative Hymanson. Would you like to introduce yourself?
No problem. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Patty Hymanson. I represent House District.
Thank you.
It's somebody who's been having.
I'm Representative Patty Hymanson. I represent House District 4, which is parts of York, Wells, Sanford, and Olive Ogunquit.
Wonderful. So, Ann Danforth, you have the floor for your testimony for 3 minutes, and welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee. My name is Ann Danforth, and I'm a policy advocate at Maine Equal Justice, a nonprofit legal aid provider working to increase economic security, opportunity, and equity for people in Maine. I'm here to testify today in support of several items in LD 1733 and to highlight a few ways in which this proposal could be strengthened to better meet the needs of low-income Mainers as our economy recovers. Through our work at Maine Equal Justice, we know well that the state's economic recovery will depend on successfully supporting, training, and increasing access to family-sustaining employment for people with low income currently left out of the workforce. While the pandemic has highlighted the critical nature of the safety net in keeping low-income Mainers on their feet, it's also highlighted the difficulty in navigating today's siloed and antiquated system of social and work supports, resulting in their failure to reach many of those who need them most in a timely manner, or at all. We have the opportunity now with federal American Rescue Funds to begin to bring our safety net and work support programs into the 21st century, making them simple and easy to use, well-coordinated, human-centered, efficient, and really work for the people who use them. Part X of LD 1733 moves us closer to this goal by proposing to use ARP funds to invest in accessible, safe, and efficient state government services and programs. The strategic use of these federal funds to improve safety net and work support programs to make sure people who are eligible are actually able to access them is an opportunity to get money into the pockets of low-income Mainers, take advantage of new federal supports coming to Mainers in the form of tax credits, for example, support people in getting back to work, and strengthen our economy. We offer a proposed amendment to the allocation language at Part X2 at the end of this testimony to ensure these key reforms are appropriately prioritized. The pandemic has also highlighted the critical role of quality, affordable childcare and early learning. We urge you to consider using some of the flexible ARP funds to provide equitable access to childcare and early learning for Maine's immigrant workers. Currently, certain immigrants, including asylum seekers, are not eligible for the state's childcare subsidy program, and as a result, were left out of other federal childcare enhancements. These more flexible funds provide the opportunity to remedy that inequity and ensure that new Mainers receive equal access to childcare. And this was something explicitly recommended in the report of the Governor's Economic Recovery Committee, and it has an anticipated cost of only approximately $250,000 per year. And finally, we are grateful for the initiatives in LD 1733 designed to expand and strengthen Maine's workforce by connecting low-income workers with skills trainings that will lead to better job opportunities. This includes the significant expansion of the Competitive Skills Scholarship Program, along with apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship opportunities, as well as investments to strengthen systems to support workers, including improving the ability of career centers to connect Mainers with supports and jobs. Thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Danforth. Any questions for Ms. Danforth? If there are, please raise your electronic hand if any committee members. Not seeing any. So I will say thank you so much for being with us. Next, we have Annie Salikas and then Annie Watson. And I'm not, oh, there you are. Welcome and go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. My name is Annie Salikas. I am the Executive Director of the Maine Lobster Dealers Association, a trade association supporting lobster wholesalers and processors in the state. I'm speaking in support of LD 1733, the ARP funding bill. I'm specifically speaking to Part B, and within that, the only initiative for the Maine Department of Marine Resources. This initiative can be found on the bottom of page 3 of the ARP document within Part B. This proposal provides $10 million to the Maine Department of Marine Resources for development and implementation of a competitive grant program to support seafood wholesalers and processors in infrastructure improvements and investments in their business. This initiative is both essential and timely for the Maine seafood sector. We have all learned so much in the midst of and emerging from the pandemic, but in the seafood business, in the early days of the pandemic last year, we quickly saw cracks, both literal and figurative, in our supply chain as our demands and needs shifted. International travel came to a screeching halt, and so did our export business. The cruise ship industry stopped. Customers stopped dining out. Prior to the pandemic, 70 to 80% of all seafood products that were consumed in this country were consumed outside of the home. All of our products that had been destined for food service distribution needed to be repacked and repositioned for retail or e-commerce. It is a good thing that Maine lobster wholesalers and processors were quick to adapt because it kept fishermen fishing as we built, adjusted, and expanded domestic market almost overnight. But that work did not come without major expense and reinvestment in infrastructure. Previous COVID-19 relief packages were not a good fit for the seafood industry. There has been a complete lack of state and federal support for supply chain resiliency in the seafood sector. In the past, programs through the Maine Technology Institute have funded incredible innovation in seafood, but so often what this sector really needs is very basic: access to proper utilities like three-phase power, electrical outfitting in a new commercial space, or infrastructure needs like ice makers. It isn't the newest technology, but it is essential to our ability to do business. These investments are often under $100,000, but can seriously eat into the profitability of the small businesses that are the backbone of our sector in Maine. We need a real, well-funded pool of resources that are exclusively accessible to seafood distribution and processing for infrastructure improvement and supply chain resiliency. This could support businesses ranging from cooperatives to large-scale processors, seafood wholesale distributors to aquaculturalists. Applicants for this program should be required to hold an active seafood wholesale license with Maine DMR. If this $10 million package is appropriated, we are committed to working closely with DMR and our peers throughout the seafood wholesale sector in Maine. Our industry supports hardworking Mainers throughout the value chain, and our facilities are critical infrastructure that contribute to domestic food security. Please support our sector in modernizing and upgrading our aging systems. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Salikas? I'm not seeing any. So thank you very much. Next, we have Annie Watson. And after Ms. Watson, we're going to have President Joan Farini-Mundi of the Humane System, and then President Dave Dagler of the Community College System. So Ms. Watson, go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the committee. My name is Annie Watson, and I'm joining you here today from Sheepscot Valley Farm in Whitefield, where I live with my husband and 3 little boys. When I'm not busy as a mother and organic dairy farmer, I serve as president of the Maine Organic Milk Producers and on the board of directors of both the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association and the Maine Dairy Industry Association. And additionally, I'm founder and CEO of the Maine Organic Milk Company. I'm here today to testify in support of LD 1733 and the investment in our heritage industries, specifically our agricultural infrastructure and processing. An investment in our agricultural infrastructure and processing is desperately needed. Today, our local dairy industry struggles to maintain operations in the face of startling decreases in the number of farms, rising costs of production, long hauling distances, and an aging farmer demographic. Maine is currently a fluid dependent state with 2 major bottling operations in Portland, Oakhurst and Hood. While these processors are drawing 100% of their milk from Maine farms, they primarily serve the conventional dairy market. Organic dairy farmers in our state are especially aware of the lack of accessible in-state processing for our products. The milk market is essentially controlled by 3 large out-of-state processors. Currently, all of the wholesale organic milk produced in Maine leaves our state to be processed elsewhere. Our dependence on these out-of-state processors leaves our organic dairies in Maine in a precarious position should one of them decide to cut the region, as is happening in other parts of the country currently. Additionally, like conventional dairies in Maine, we're unable to balance our supply through our own in-state processing infrastructure and are dependent on the national market for our milk sales. The coronavirus pandemic exacerbated this problem throughout our entire food system, and our lack of ability to feed our own people became glaringly obvious. Despite these challenges, we remain determined and even optimistic as we look to the future. Our farmers are creative and resilient, and we are always looking for new opportunities to get our products to market. An investment in our agriculture infrastructure and processing would allow us to gain competitive advantage and potentially grow our dairy industry. It is an investment in our farms, the economic engines that are the backbone of our rural communities. I urge you to support LD 1733. Thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Watson. Are there any questions from any members of the committee for Ms. Watson? I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to welcome the president of the UMaine system, Dr. Joan Farini Mundy. And then we'll have President Dagler of the community college system. And I'm going to move over Jim Herbert from University of New England as well in a moment. So President Farini Mundy, welcome.
Good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee. I'm Joan Farini Mundy, the president of the University of Maine and our regional campus, the University of Maine at Machias, and also vice chancellor for the University of Maine System for Research and Innovation. And I'm here to ask for your support of the $35 million direct allocation proposed in the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, LD 1733, for the state's largest education and research enterprise. Our system proposes to use these funds to build critical infrastructure together with a talented workforce for Maine's economy, with an expansion of paid internship and other high-impact work learning opportunities for our undergraduate and graduate students. These dollars will be deployed UMS system-wide. Here are 2 examples, and my testimony includes more. These funds will help to construct the Green Engineering and Materials, or GEM, Factory of the Future at the University of Maine, which will be co-located with our Advanced Structures and Composites Center. Using wood and wood residuals, we'll undertake research and development as the foundation for manufacturing large-scale 3D printed objects, including rapid military and industry prototypes, affordable housing, clean energy components, and durable transportation solutions. Our students will have hands-on research learning experiences in partnership with Maine companies. The project has attracted interest beyond Maine, including from the U.S. Department of Defense. The pandemic has exacerbated Maine's lack of access to affordable, high-quality childcare that's essential to the development of our children and their parents' ability to participate fully in the workforce. These funds will also go to the renovation and expansion of the University of Maine at Farmington's renowned Sweat Winter Childcare and Early Extension Center. There are many other examples in our written testimony. So we ask for your support of this bill, as well as the additional appropriations for our system and to our students in the supplemental budget. The plan before you today gives our public and private sector research and development enterprise a chance to move forward and to move Maine forward. Thank you so much, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee for President Freeney-Mundy? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Next, we have President Dagler of the Maine Community College System, and then we will have James Herbert from University of New England, and I'm going to move Greg Payne from Maine Affordable Housing Coalition over to the panel, so he will be in the queue. So President Dagler, take it away.
Thank you, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. As the Senator has indicated, I'm David Dagler, and I'm president of the Maine Community College System, and I thank you for providing me an opportunity to testify on the Maine Community College System portion of LD 1733. It can be found in Part N on pages 18 and 19 of the LD. You know, we're living in an era that is without precedent in the history of Maine, and the same can be said for her community colleges. The past year and a half has brought unparalleled tragedy to many Maine people, but it's also shown us that when we work together and invest our resources wisely, we can make it through anything and come out stronger. When the pandemic hit, we found new ways to help Maine people and businesses. With your last investment, we were able to offer some hope to industries and people hit hardest by the pandemic. The federal resources provided to Maine, if invested in workforce training with your community colleges, will allow us to continue our current efforts and expand those short-term training programs that have become so vital. We'll reach critical industries, geographically distributed across the state. We will retrain the people most impacted by this pandemic and give them opportunity to find meaningful work right here in Maine. The funding will allow us to address the emerging workforce needs and offer Mainers who lost learning opportunities during the pandemic new chances at good jobs. In so doing, we can build a foundation for Maine's businesses that will last through the remainder of the 21st century. We know this model works. We hear regularly from students and businesses that Maine's community colleges are providing life-changing, career-making training every day. We're committed to continuing and expanding that good work so Mainers can participate in a thriving post-pandemic economic landscape. The $35 million proposed in the plan will provide support for short-term training for approximately 8,500 Mainers over the life of the funding. This is equal to about half of the increased unemployment when compared to pre-pandemic levels. Attached to our testimony are other specific examples of the workforce training initiatives we intend to launch if this funding is approved. I'd like to note that thanks to a Harold Alfond grant made 2 years ago, we already have the infrastructure to step up these programs quickly and efficiently. All we need are the resources to get started. We have solid plans and an amazing team just waiting to get to work. It is my sincere hope that you will support the Maine Community College's appropriation in LD 1733. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Dagler. Any questions from the committee for President Dagler? I am not seeing any. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Next is President Herbert of University of New England, and then I have Greg Payne from the Maine Housing Coalition. And Mr. Herbert, go right ahead.
Great, thank you so much. So Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. My name is James Herbert, and I'm here representing both the University of New England as president, but also as co-chair of the Talent Subcommittee of Governor Mills's Economic Recovery Committee to testify in strong support of LD 1733. The process we developed through the Economic Recovery Committee was it leveraged this unique period in history to undertake a really sober analysis of Maine's strengths and challenges. And the legislation you have before you is intended to capitalize on the opportunities that that examination presented. So I fully support the overall spending package the governor has proposed which is well aligned with the investment priorities determined by the ERC. The assistance of programs for small businesses, especially those in rural areas, and the investment in Maine's signature heritage industries are crucial lifelines to many entrepreneurs working in those areas. And I mean, I don't need to tell you all that small businesses are really a lifeline, a lifeblood of Maine's economy. Along with my colleague and friend, Bill Burke, I co-chaired the ERC Talent Subcommittee, and that was comprised of leaders from industry, the nonprofit sector, government, academia, and we really focused our efforts on workforce needs in Maine, with a particular emphasis on the role of education in preparing the talent that will be needed for 21st century jobs in the new economy. A highly skilled workforce is absolutely key to attracting, developing, and retaining the well-paying jobs in all regions of Maine, not just southern Maine, but the whole state. And producing that workforce is going to require a more comprehensive and integrated approach to learning, all the way from preschool to postgraduate studies. And that includes partnerships between the state public system, the community college system, and the state's private colleges and universities with respect to higher education. Educating this workforce both for the jobs of today and tomorrow, and improving the quality of and access to healthcare throughout the state are areas of proposed investment that are going to be critical to expand economic opportunities. And these are well outlined in the Act itself and in my written testimony. As president of UNE, which is Maine's largest private university, and we have a broad array of healthcare programs, I can say that there's few things that are more important than training in the healthcare areas. This is crucial to Maine's economy, both within the healthcare, but also just to provide a healthy workforce. There's huge gaps in our healthcare workforce, and we have to expand training opportunities, increase collaboration, increase interdisciplinary training, and building on telehealth and telemedicine, which of course requires the investments in broadband. So LD 33, in conclusion, it has many important investments in Maine, not the least of which, at least from my perspective, being in the interrelated areas of workforce development, broadband infrastructure, and healthcare. Those areas seem very appropriate for investments of federal funds. And along with the many other strategic initiatives in the Act, I wholeheartedly endorse the government's proposed spending program and urge you to vote in favor. So thank you very much, and happy to address any questions.
Thank you very much, President Herbert. Any questions for President Herbert of UNE from our committee? Not seeing any. Okay. Greg Payne has indulged me. President Brennan from Maine Maritime Academy just signed on. So thank you, Dr. Herbert, for joining us. And we now have President Brennan of the Maine Maritime Academy. So he's going to go, and then we will have Greg Payne. So President Brennan, welcome.
Thank you. Bill Brennan from the Maine Maritime Academy, Senator Green and Representative Peirce and members of the committee. I'm pleased to tell you that Maine Maritime Academy is about to receive a new training ship built and paid for by the federal government at a cost of $300 million. This ship and 4 cylinder ships to be built are part of a program established by the Congress to provide 5 state maritime academies with training vessels that would also be used in times of natural disasters for humanitarian assistance. The National Security Multi-Mission Vessel will be a significant advancement over our current training ship. It is purpose-built for training and educating our future professional mariners and will provide our students with much more sophisticated systems upon which to advance their skills and knowledge. Recently, the Federal Maritime Administration has assessed the shoreside infrastructure for each state maritime academy to determine the suitability of the facilities for the NSMV. Unfortunately, we have been alerted that the mooring systems for our facility in Castine is inadequate to securely moor this new ship, and Maine Maritime Academy, like all of the other 4 maritime colleges that will receive these new vessels, must complete a rebuild of piers and mooring systems. For Maine Maritime Academy, the gross estimate of the renovation and rehabilitation work is in the range of $20 million. And today we seek $10 million in state funding to match the federal funds for the rehabilitation of state-owned shoreside infrastructure on our campus in Castine. In addition to adequately securing the vessel during storm conditions, the rehabilitation is necessary to provide for the power, steam, water, and sewage needs of the vessel so that it can be fully utilized while in port without running generators or relying solely on ship systems. Providing sufficient power to the vessel from shore significantly reduces greenhouse gas emissions. The State Maritime Academy Consortium, in conjunction with the Maritime Administration within the U.S. Department of Transportation, has been working with federal appropriators to develop a means of supporting each school's infrastructure redevelopment needs. While federal support for redevelopment of our pier is anticipated, there is no doubt that a state-level match would be expected, especially as the shoreside infrastructure is owned by the respective states, all of which have made a commitment to the federal government to ensure adequate protection, security, and support for these training ships. Accordingly, Maine Maritime Academy requests $10 million of the American Rescue Plan monies received from the state by the federal government. The Academy has available $1 million to dedicate to this project, but that is clearly insufficient to meet the overall need. For a maritime college, our waterfront and shoreside infrastructure is important to our student success, as is a classroom or laboratory. In our specialized program of study, the training ship is an essential component of our hands-on educational model. And indeed, our students must spend months at sea during their time at the Academy in order to receive the U.S. Coast Guard licenses they seek, in addition to their baccalaureate degrees, which are linked to the receipt of their licenses. While our shoreside infrastructure is critical to securing the operating the vessel, there has been no significant upgrades to this state-owned facility in more than 20 years. Despite careful maintenance, the years of use and sea level rise have made the drainage systems, the pilings, the mooring dolphins, decking, electrical, and septic systems woefully inadequate and in need of rehabilitation, even were this new vessel not a consideration. Given the complexity of the new ship and the need for a highly secure and reliable support system, it is imperative that this work commence soon. With the town of Castine's public waterfront adjacent to the Academy's property, a joint waterfront revitalization project is contemplated as mutually beneficial to the overall health and economic prosperity of our coastal town. Maine Maritime Academy respectfully seeks favorable consideration by the Academy of the request, which will serve our core academic and training mission by enhancing waterfront infrastructure and consequently serving to address rising sea level, providing workforce development opportunities and Maine-based infrastructure. Thank you for the opportunity. I'd be pleased to respond to any questions now or during the work session.
Thank you very much. Any questions for President Brennan about the Maine Maritime Academy? I'm not seeing any. Glad you could join us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to have Greg Payne, and then from Maine Affordable Housing, and then we will have Jeff McCabe from Maine State Employees Association, and after that, we will have Brian Whitney from Maine Technology Institute. So Greg, thanks for your patience. Go right ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. My name is Greg Payne. I'm the director of the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition. We do strongly support LD 1733, and in particular, the investments that proposal makes in new affordable housing development and energy efficiency and workforce development. I know members of the committee are very highly aware of the extraordinary housing needs that Maine had prior to the pandemic and which seem to be getting worse as we get out of the pandemic. But I'd like to call out just a few things briefly reflecting on this bill. One is the $50 million that's proposed for affordable housing specifically. And I just want to mention that there's been a lot of good conversations happening with county governments and municipal governments that are interested in using some of their fiscal recovery funds for housing as well. And the idea here is that there could be some coordination between those local jurisdictions and the state to make the most of those dollars and to coordinate with each other. And so the flexibility inherent in LD 1733 is very helpful for those conversations as they further develop. Another thing I want to just call out here is that many of you are aware of a separate effort to create a land use and zoning commission. That bill, LD 609, is likely to be finally approved and sent to the governor today, it would appear, but that has bipartisan support. And I just wanted to call out that LD 1733 kind of highlights the need to support that effort, which we think makes a lot of sense. Obviously, the work of that commission, assuming that it is enacted, is going to play out this fall and into the winter before it comes back with recommendations to the legislature. But the fact that this bill as written gives some flexibility for potential grants to municipalities to incentivize changes to land use and zoning provisions is very helpful. Last thing I want to call out is that, you know, in the affordable housing sector, we have a lot of hope right now about the potential for an increase in the pipeline. Our currently woefully insufficient pipeline of affordable housing development. We're hopeful about what's to come, but one of the things we are really concerned about is the construction worker shortage, and you know, the shortage and the need for workforce development in the construction sector is already driving costs up, not just for affordable housing, for all kinds of development. And so we are also highly supportive of the elements of this bill that would serve to improve and address the worker shortage in the construction sector. So I will stop there, but again, just wholeheartedly support this bill and the flexibility inherent in it to try to address our housing challenges in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Any questions for Mr. Payne from the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition? All right, I'm not seeing any. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to have Jeff McCabe of Maine State Employees Association, and then Brian Whitney from MTI. Mr. McCabe, go right ahead.
Thank you, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, members of the Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. My name is Jeff McCabe, the Director of Legislation and Politics for Maine Service Employees Association. We are here today in strong support of the bill before you. And with that being said, there is one initiative that we think should be added to this to help strengthen the bill before you. By funding hazard pay for Maine's essential workers, as doing so as expressly allowed and authorized under the American Rescue Plan Act signed by President Biden, we feel that that is an essential addition to this bill before you today. And I did want to start off by saying, ever since the COVID-19 pandemic hit Maine in March of 2020, Maine workers and their family and our economy have been challenged like never before. Yet thanks to the leadership shown by this administration, Maine is leading the nation in terms of vaccinations. The administration is leadership in our great state of Maine and protection of Maine citizens during this pandemic is getting Maine's economy back on track. And we're encouraged by the breadth and scope presented here in LD 1773, as it will strengthen Maine's economy further and will work to get us back on the right track. As it relates to state work sites around the state, this initiative will help the state lead by example by ensuring that its buildings are safe and healthy, not just for state employees, but for everyone who enters them. You should know that in the beginning of the pandemic, the Mills administration designated all state employees as essential workers. And as a result, throughout the pandemic, workers and state departments have been reporting to work to serve Maine people at considerable risk to themselves and their families. As such, we must raise the issue of hazard pay in the discussion around the state of Maine's use of American Rescue Plan Act funds. During 2020, some of our members secured hazard pay agreements with the state of Maine and received hazard pay in certain employees doing frontline work in Maine's DHHS at locations such as Riverview, Dorothea Dix, Psychiatric Center, the Department of Corrections, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Administration and Financial Services, and more. Some of these agreements the state allowed to withdraw with a 7 days notice, but the agreements covering essential workers in state prisons, state hospitals, and within DAFs were explicitly tied to the governor's state of emergency. However, the administration abruptly canceled those agreements on December 30th, 2020, including those agreements that were to run through the end of the civil emergency. The administration claims that it canceled the agreements because of the federal funding for hazard pay expired at the end of 2020. However, those agreements were tied to no reference to federal funding. In March of this year, the federal government passed the American Rescue Plan, under which Maine is due to receive over $4 billion over the next several years. One of the express purposes of this relief fund is to provide premium pay for workers performing essential work. See Section 602C.1.b of the Act. The total cost of restoring hazard pay for workers in state prisons, state hospitals, and DAFs is a mere fraction of 1% of the total funding. However, despite this express purpose of federal funding, the proposal does not use any of these funds for hazard pay. Throughout state government, we've known for years that low wages paid to state of Maine employees have contributed to widespread state employee recruitment and retention issue. The cancellation of hazard pay agreements has exacerbated the state's recruitment and retention issue. Some state workers quit their job after their hazard pay was canceled. They now earn higher wages in the private sector. At Department of Corrections, for example, restoring hazard pay would be essential and helpful in terms of recruitment and retention. It's important to note workers in Maine correctional system continue to wear masks regardless of whether they're vaccinated, and that in the event of an outbreak, all staff, yep.
Just want to give you a heads up to wrap it up. Your time is
Sure thing. We therefore respectfully call on the committee to make sure that the appropriate one-time funding is available to restore hazard pay and respect the workers in state prisons, state hospitals, and DAFs. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I will draw your attention to my rather lengthy written testimony this time, and there's a lot of detail and resources there. And I look forward to answering any questions the committee may have in the halls of the State House. And I'll be over there probably within the next 20 minutes or half hour. So happy to take any questions now too.
Thank you, Mr. McCabe. Any questions for Mr. McCabe? Not seeing any, but we know where to find you.
I'll see you shortly. Thanks.
Thank you. And my name's not shortly. We next have Brian Whitney from Maine Technology Institute. Then we're going to have Jason Shedlock and then Matt Schlobaum. So Mr. Whitney, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Brian Whitney. I'm the president of the Maine Technology Institute. I'm testifying in support of LD 1733 and in particular the $80 million that's slated for innovation. I understand that questions have been raised about whether funding for innovation is an eligible use of these federal funds. In response, I reached out to our National Trade Association, SSTI, for guidance. And they've been working really closely with Treasury to ensure that appropriate direction is relayed to members. They noted that there is ample flexibility for states to propose spending that helps address the negative impacts born of the pandemic. Specifically, the interim rules section on economic damages provides more than sufficient latitude for these types of innovation investments to, for example, address revenue losses to nonprofits, small businesses, and minority-led companies, as well as to specific industries. So recognizing revenue loss as an economic hardship to those entity types and/or targeted sectors, and responding with funding solutions, whether grant, loan, or investments to those affected entities, is explicitly allowed in the interim rule, not just implicitly. And based on quarterly reporting provided by our portfolio companies, I can tell you that none of them were performing to their revenue plans because of the pandemic. Why is it important to focus on strategic innovation investments to help build a resilient and prosperous economy? Well, quite simply, innovation funding is the critical lifeblood for many Maine companies that have no other source of funding to develop new products or services. These investments by the state and federal government help companies accelerate more quickly, providing well-paying quality jobs for Maine people, leveraging substantial private sector matching investment, and generating momentous economic impact. To illustrate this fact further, MTI had $45 million in bond funding to deploy several years ago, thanks to your sage support. Awards made with that funding helped generate 5,350 jobs, leveraged $192 million in private sector matching investment, and generated $1.4 billion in economic impact. Last year, we awarded the remaining $2 million from that bond, and those awards created and retained over 1,600 jobs across the state of Maine, from the north in Limestone and Madawaska, to the south in Springvale, and the east in Eastport, as well as points in between, Brewer, Brunswick, Lisbon, Thomaston, Waldoboro, and Westbrook. The awards were matched by $31,985,000 in private sector matching funds, and that's a 14-to-1 matching ratio. So imagine the impact you will have by dedicating $80 million of the discretionary American Rescue Plan funding to drive innovation, create quality jobs, leverage private sector investment, and grow our economy. This is a transformational moment for Maine and its economy. Strategic investments in innovation are critical to helping Maine regain its economic footing. And without question, Maine's entrepreneurial, innovation-minded companies are well positioned to lead our economic recovery post-pandemic. A number of these busy companies, almost 20 at last count, have taken the time on short notice to submit written testimony to this committee today to highlight the vital role innovation funding has played in helping to grow their enterprises. Their stories demonstrate specific examples of how this much needed funding will help accelerate Maine's economic recovery, create and grow more high growth enterprises, and develop a more resilient Maine economy. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm happy to address any questions or concerns you may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Whitney, Maine Technology Institute? Not seeing any. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jason Shedlock from the Laborers International Union. Mr. Shedlock, go ahead.
Thanks very much. Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. I'm Jason J. Shedlock. I'm a regional organizer for the Laborers International Union of North America. I'm also a trustee and executive board member of both the Maine AFL-CIO and Southern Maine Labor Council, and a resident of South Portland. I also serve on the Maine Apprenticeship Council as well as the State Workforce Board. I appear before you today to urge you to pass LD 1733 and to utilize federal funds made available to Maine to fund energy efficient affordable housing projects with strong labor standards as passed in LD 1656. A few people before me, Greg Payne, spoke on this as well. My local union is over 300 strong in Maine with access to thousands more skilled professionals across New England. Laborers International Union wholeheartedly supports this funding plan because we must not force our skilled craftspeople to build the very affordable housing that they will need to then turn around and live in because of depressed wages and a lack of labor standards. We support utilizing federal recovery dollars by way of LD 1656's implementation structure because it not only is necessary to address the widening affordable housing gap, but because it also speaks to the sustainability of our workforce and our environment in a way that directly meets the guidance outlined by the U.S. Treasury for these specific funds. The plan outlined in the legislation passed earlier sets labor standards through the use of project labor agreements or PLAs. Make no mistake, by the funding model passed under LD 1656, your colleagues in the House and Senate, this committee and the state will be sending a clear message that when we spend public dollars on affordable housing in Maine, the women and men who build it will no longer be an afterthought. Through PLAs, by partnering with the building trades unions such as the laborers, we ensure that workers are paid fairly, trained well, earn health care benefits, and after an honest career, have an even shot at retiring with dignity. PLAs incorporate registered apprenticeship programs, so we are training Maine's future builders, something that Greg mentioned as well. They also can include targets for traditionally underserved populations such as women and people of color. There are also programs for returning veterans. PLAs are crafted in partnership with contractors and labor organizations to fit the needs of specific projects in the specific communities where they exist. PLAs are pre-job agreements that set the standards, expectations, and rules for a specific project and that project only. To be clear, any contractor, union or non, can bid, win, and perform on a project under a PLA. True, any contractor must agree to treat the workers on that project fairly and play by the pre-established rules. But why should we not get to yes when it comes to empowering our workers, given that we are injecting tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money into affordable housing? And in turn, these workers are injecting part of their paychecks into local economies. We can no longer accept no as a strategy to address issues of inequity. Funding through this structure gets the yes by addressing three major issues in Maine: our affordable housing shortage, our climate crisis, and our skilled workforce shortage. Utilizing these available recovery funds is not only appropriate at this critical time, it will serve to show that we can implement these projects in a way that can be a model for years to come. The Laborers Union stands ready to address Maine's needs when it comes to building the future and doing so in a sustainable way. Passing LD 1733 and funding the plan outlined with recovery funds goes a long way in setting the rules of the game on workforce standards while addressing the key needs of affordable housing and environmental stewardship. Thank you in advance for your consideration, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Shedlock from the committee? Not seeing any. Thank you for joining us. Next is Matt Schlobohm, and then after Mr. Schlobohm, I'm going to move over Patrice McCary of the Maine Lobstermen's Association. Patrice McCarran. Mr. Schlobohm, go right ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the AFA committee. My name is Matt Schlobohm. I'm the executive director of the Maine AFL-CIO. We're a labor federation of 160 unions representing 40,000 working people in Maine. I'm testifying today in support of LD 1733. And I think the Cliff Notes version of my testimony is we strongly support the legislation. We particularly want to highlight and lift up the strong use of registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship as a key provision. We strongly support the various ways that this legislation invests in Maine infrastructure through our state parks, through cleaner water, through affordable housing, through state technology, through a variety of things. And then we would offer three thoughts on ways to improve the legislation. The first being the hazard pay provisions that Mr. McCabe referenced. The second being to consider how do we attach job quality standards to money moving out at this scale. And the third being to explore, are there ways to deepen and expand the very positive emphasis on equity in the bill? So a few quick thoughts to elaborate on those things. I think we can all agree that the COVID pandemic has both lifted up the incredible work that Maine workers have done for the last 15 months and also laid bare deep inequalities of income, wealth, power, and opportunity that cut very sharply along lines of race, gender, class, and geography in our state. And we welcome the American Rescue Plan and appreciate the leadership that got it to where it is, as well as the state implementation of it through this bill. We've spent a lot of time organizationally utilizing registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship through our affiliate unions. We strongly support parts I, H, P, and L of LD 1733 that's build upon and strengthen registered apprenticeship. And just from personal experience, having spent a lot of time talking and working with electrical apprentices and apprentices at the shipyard and other places, it is hard to overstate how transformative registered apprenticeship is. You get a 3 to 5 year education, you earn while you learn, you are guaranteed in essence a job in a field where there will be a decent paying job, and you come out of that with zero debt. Most of the apprentices I know, the only cost they bear is the cost of their books. And I think apprenticeship has been underutilized in Maine. We have great opportunities to expand who is an apprentice and who's in the programs. And it's no surprise that apprentices from start to finish raise their wages by 41% in Maine. So it's a tried and true effective model we should build upon. We appreciate the inclusion of the Competitive Skills Scholarship Program as well as a great wraparound support for training and apprentices. I think you also recognize and know our strong support for the infrastructure provisions in this bill that I think we all recognize Maine has a lot of work to do to get up to the levels we would like: state parks, bridges, highways, housing, drinking and wastewater, fish hatcheries, and I think especially the technological infrastructure. We've spent a lot of time in the last 15 months helping workers navigate unemployment insurance, and the vision embodied in LD 1733 of a one-stop shop where people can access multiple state services with a technological interface that's easy to use is a very good one. Quick thoughts, and I'll wrap here on ways to strengthen the legislation. I think workers, especially essential workers, have put themselves out there in the last 15 months in ways that deserve recognition, respect, and compensation. And hazard pay is an inadequate tool, but an important one. In my testimony, I offer a few thoughts on how we might implement that. I think at the bare minimum, the state should honor its own commitments, and we would love to see that expanded more broadly to cover more workers who put their lives on the line, quite literally. The last two thoughts on ways to strengthen: I agree with Mr. Shedlock's testimony about standards on the housing provisions. I think the governor's training initiative that's been utilized in the past offers a decent template, and we should think about, when we're moving literally billions of dollars, how do we ensure the quality of jobs we're creating and the standards that wrap around these things. And lastly, I applaud the inclusion of equity provisions and support for the Permanent Commission and other things like that. And I think it'd be wonderful to think about other ways to expand that funding and think more deeply about how we root out structural inequities through this incredible opportunity with these funds. So thank you for your consideration. Thank you for your good work. And I'd be happy to answer any questions and to work with the committee going forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schlobohm. Any questions for Mr. Schlobohm from the committee? Not seeing any. So I want to thank you for coming and introduce Patrice McCarron, who is here from the Maine Lobstermen's Association. And I'm just gonna, there are several folks here representing various interests in blueberries. So I'm gonna move over the blueberry folks, and as Ms. McCarron is speaking, go right ahead.
Thank you, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the AFA committee. My name is Patrice McCarron. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Lobstermen's Association. MLA is a lobster industry association that has been advocating for sustainable lobster resource in the fishermen and communities that depend on it since 1954. I'm testifying in favor of LD 1733, specifically for the Department of Marine Resources budget request within Part 5 of the ARP document to support investment in critical infrastructure and research to support Maine's lobster industry as it recovers from the impacts of COVID. MLA supports the full suite of investments requested by DMR, excuse me, as they strengthen different segments of our seafood industry. However, I want to highlight two specific initiatives that would provide critical support to enable the continued operation of Maine's lobster fishery. First, in Part 5, on page 33, the MLA strongly supports DMR's request of $3.325 million within the Bureau of Marine Patrol to construct a new offshore patrol vessel. This infrastructure investment will greatly enhance DMR's ability to safely and effectively operate more than 40 miles from shore to ensure the protection of the lobster resource and right whales, and to respond to crises at sea. Lobstermen regularly contact the MLA to express frustration over the lack of enforcement presence in this segment of the lobster fishery. Second, and also in Part 5, but on page 34, the MLA strongly supports DMR's request of $3 million for emergent needs within the Bureau of Policy and Management to conduct strategic research on right whales and to expand harvester reporting. Both of these programs are critical to the continued operation of the lobster fishery and require significant investment at a time when the industry is recovering from the impacts of COVID. Maine's lobster and gillnet fisheries are facing a 98% risk reduction through a federal management action to protect right whales, and Maine must expand its research to inform future management that will preserve our ability to fish. Maine is also required to expand its harvester reporting from 10% to 100% by 2024, or perhaps sooner under the whale rules to remain compliant with these federal management plans. These investments are needed for the lobster fishery to continue to operate, but lobstermen are simply not in a position to take on these costs through license fee increases or special fees, as our industry recovers from a 17% loss in gross revenue due to COVID. It is critical that the state support and protect Maine's $2 billion lobster industry and the tens and thousands of jobs and businesses it supports throughout Maine's coastal communities by funding the strategic investments requested by DMR. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. McCarron. Any questions for Ms. McCarron from the committee? Not seeing any. So thank you very much for joining us today. So next we have Eric Venturini, and then Holly Francis, and then Heather Spalding.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Breen. Thank you, Representative Pierce, and esteemed members of the Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. My name is Eric Venturini. I'm the Executive Director of the Wild Blueberry Commission of Maine, the voice of Maine's wild blueberry farms and businesses. I speak today in strong support and focus my testimony specifically on Part B, a $20 million investment in heritage industries, and Part G2, a $75 to $80 million investment in innovation, research, and development. I'll try to be brief and refer you to my more comprehensive written testimony. Maine's wild blueberry industry is included in one of the 4 thematic areas identified in Governor Mills' 2020 to 2029 Economic Development Strategy. These categories are recognized in her plan as strengths with a growing global demand and potential for job creation. Governor Mills is absolutely correct. In conversations with farms and businesses, demand for wild blueberries is strong. In fact, 2020 to 2021 saw a 12-month 52% increase in demand for frozen wild blueberries at retail, outpacing ordinary blueberries by 22% and frozen fruit by 14%. Over the past 20 years, however, the number of Maine wild blueberry farms contributing to the state's economy has steadily decreased. Between 1997 and 2017, we lost over 300 farms, or 40%. Why? Because many of our farms are struggling to achieve profitability. Indeed, a lack of profitability discouraging generational transfer and contributing to the loss of farms and businesses was recently identified by the Wild Blueberry Commission as a major barrier to the prosperity of Maine wild blueberry farms. One of the limiting factors of small to medium-sized farms is their processing capacity. They simply cannot process enough during the short harvest window to become profitable. Investments in basic processing infrastructure would help these farms achieve profitability and would help maintain this iconic industry as an economic powerhouse. Long-term declines in the number of wild blueberry farms demonstrate the need for investment, coupled with opportunities stemming from increased demand and shifting markets with COVID-19. The time to invest is now. Rather than take more of your time, I refer you to the testimony of Wyman's, a wild blueberry grower and processor, and I quote, "The Maine wild blueberry crop is not large enough to meet the demand of U.S. consumers. Without investment, that gap will continue to grow. We believe investments in technology for farming, harvesting, field processing, storage, and value-added processing will be vital to ensuring the long-term viability of the wild blueberry economy in Maine. With challenges like global warming and an increased cultivated supply, the industry must adapt." Wyman's did submit written testimony, but is not here to present it live. I also encourage you to listen well to the testimony next of Holly Francis of the Passamaquoddy Wild Blueberry Company. In short, the allocation of $20 million to farm and processing infrastructure and $80 million to innovation, research, and development will have a direct, dramatic, and far-reaching positive impact on Maine agriculture. Thank you for your time, and I urge you to vote ought to pass on this historic bill, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Venturini. Any questions for Mr. Venturini from the panel? Not seeing any. Thank you so much for joining us. Next is Holly Francis, and then we will have Heather Spalding.
Thank you, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and other members of the Committee on the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee. My name is Holly Francis, and I'm speaking as the Value Added Product Manager for the Passamaquoddy Wild Blueberry Company. I'll also refer to this as PWBC moving forward.
PWBC is the only Native American-owned wild blueberry farm in the United States, and we are the largest non-processing farm in the state of Maine with 2,000 acres of barrens in Washington County. I speak today in support of LD 1733, specifically Section B1, Investment in Heritage Industries, and Part G2, a $75 million investment in innovation, research, and development. The Wabanaki people, including members of the Passamaquoddy, Penobscot, Micmac, and Maliseet tribes, have started harvesting wild blueberries long before colonization. This act was never viewed as agricultural labor, but rather a natural part of the earth's harvest. The tribes used wild blueberries in a number of ways, like a food source, a way to dye clothing, and for medicinal purposes. This hand harvesting tradition has continued as members of the Wabanaki Nation venture to our barrens each year to partake in the harvest. In recent years, the wild blueberry industry as a whole has clearly struggled. As the Wild Blueberry Commission of Maine reported, last year alone saw a reduction of 25% in payees of the wild blueberry tax. It's difficult for smaller, non-processing farms to turn a profit with increasing competition from cultivated blueberries and wild blueberry markets outside of the US. For us in particular, we've shifted our focus to more mechanical harvesting in order to remain competitive. This necessary shift to mechanical harvesting is unfortunate as it directly impacts our ability to maintain an important millennia-old tradition of hand-raking wild blueberries. In order to overcome these challenges and remain competitive, 2 years ago, PWBC started on a journey towards value-added production and innovation. Our promising efforts have taught us how important and expensive innovation in the food industry can be. As a large farm, it's already a steep learning curve, and we can only imagine how much harder it will be for smaller farmers without the support of LD 1733 and its focus on innovation. While the focus has been for many farms to simply stay afloat, we're convinced that the industry can actually thrive and have positive ripple effects throughout the Maine economy in various industries, from specialty foods to tourism to cosmetics. The potential and interest for our products seems limitless, but it requires a significant investment to unlock the full potential at hand. Innovation will drive PWBC's future success, but will also benefit our employees and the community. PWBC is committed to not only preserving, but creating skilled jobs in Washington County for tribal members and the community, equipping our workforce with skills and experience that are transferable to other industries. Investing in innovation means building human capital in the long term. Innovation is an investment in our current and future generations. We believe that building upon the existing ecosystem and the great ideas and people working to innovate with Maine wild blueberries will be essential for enabling projects and partnerships, small and large. No later than yesterday, we had the opportunity to talk with the Office of Innovation and Economic Development at the University of Maine, and we are extremely excited to see the talent, resources, and energy already in place. However, product development and food processing infrastructure.
Your time is about up, so if you might want to summarize.
Almost done. Product development and food processing infrastructure remain a major challenge for us, and PWBC looks forward to the additional resources that can help add more value to our products as time is of the essence. If LD 1733 were to pass, PWBC expects this ecosystem to thrive by giving means to make great ideas become successful products and brands in the United States and beyond. We urge you to vote ought to pass, and I will answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Francis? Not seeing any. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next is Heather Spalding of the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association, and then I'm going to have several folks from some other sectors, namely Travis Kennedy from Cumberland County, Kim Cook of the Mayor's Coalition, and Christina Egan of the Greater Portland Council of Governments. But first, we have Heather Spalding.
Good afternoon, Senator Breen and Representative Peirce and members of the committee. I'm Heather Spalding, Deputy Director of Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association, MOFGA. I'm submitting comments in support of LD 1733. MOFGA is creating a food system that is healthy and fair for all of us. Through education, training, and advocacy, we're helping farmers thrive, making more local organic food available, and building sustainable communities. By the year 2030, we aim to increase the number of certified organic growers from 550 to 750, and the amount of organically managed land from 7% to 10% of the state's agricultural land. The goals of LD 1733 align perfectly with MAFCA's short and long-term goals for our farm businesses. We appreciate that this bill would provide $20 million for food processing and infrastructure. The disruption to markets due to COVID show that there is great potential for increased food processing and infrastructure. I would like to echo the call for infrastructure support from Maine's dairy sector. As you heard from Annie Watson's testimony, there's such a great need for improved infrastructure, both on farm and at the processing level. And we do hope that recovery funds will be available for dairy farmers who sit at the heart of Maine's agricultural community. Many MAFCA farmers successfully navigated the pandemic by developing on-farm processing facilities and commercial kitchens to produce value-added products and more products for their remaining or new markets. Many worked collaboratively with co-packers or incubator kitchens, buying in more value-added Maine products from other farms and businesses, and requiring aggregation and distribution infrastructure. The pandemic magnified the need for on-farm butchery and slaughterhouse infrastructure. Several of our livestock farms were venturing into on-farm butchery and expanding those operations as access to licensed slaughterhouses in Maine is dwindling. As farmers worked to comply with health and safety protocols recommended by the Centers for Disease Control, online ordering, payment, and pickup scheduling became common for most direct-to-consumer farmers and also has been used by some wholesale markets. So farm businesses' success is increasingly tied to keeping pace with marketing technology developments, and rural broadband access must be a top priority. On-farm infrastructure that is compliant with the Food Safety Modernization Act, also known as FSMA, has to be a top priority for Maine farmers as well. Attached to my written testimony is a recent Press Herald opinion editorial written by MAFCA's Executive Director, Sarah Alexander, and I hope you'll read this informative and hopeful piece, and I thank you for your consideration of this bill. We urge you to vote ought to pass. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Spalding. Any questions for Ms. Spalding? I'm not seeing any. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot.
Next up is Travis Kennedy from Cumberland County.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the committee. My name is Travis Kennedy. I'm the Director of Public Affairs for Cumberland County Government. Cumberland County supports LD 1733. Like other governments in Maine and across the country, Cumberland County is viewing the funds allocated to us through the American Rescue Plan as a saving grace, an exciting opportunity, and a complex challenge. Once it became clear that Cumberland County's allocation would far exceed our revenue losses and critical needs, we began to reach out to regional experts to identify the needs of our region and find ways that ARP funds could help. Very quickly, these meetings confirmed that there is a lot of work to do. As our team reviews the materials in LD 1733, over and over, we see the same critical needs in our cities and towns that the proposal aims to address. The COVID-19 pandemic laid bare the disparities in economic opportunity, in affordable housing, in childcare and access to education resources, in public health and safety resources, and in infrastructure needs, from internet access to clean water and broadband. These challenges were specific and pervasive before 2020 in Cumberland County, and the circumstances of our recovery are making them harder to solve than ever. We need workers to build the infrastructure that these funds will support. Those workers need housing and childcare to go to their jobs, and so on. We can't solve any of this without working together. Counties and towns should look at LD 1733 as the beginning of a conversation about how we can work directly with the state to cut down on costly duplication of efforts and capitalize on economies of scale in order to make the most of every dollar. We've already had conversations with the governor's office and some municipal leaders about ways that we can work creatively with the state and towns within the guardrails of this plan and the county's ARP funds to put our resources to better use. Considering this, as the committee works through the details of the bill, you may want to consider whether state-sponsored incentives and matches for participating counties and towns could be incorporated into the bill to encourage more collaborative work. The ARP funds are meant to be put to work quickly and thoughtfully. This bill gives us the tools to get to work now. Cumberland County sees enormous value in the proposals of LD 1733, and we believe that counties across Maine can act as a bridge between the state and municipalities in solving big problems that cross community borders. We hope that you'll see fit to pass this bill so we can all get to the important work of rebuilding together. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Kennedy from Cumberland County? Thank you very much for joining us. Next, we have Kim Cook of the Mayor's Coalition, and then we'll have Christina Egan of the Greater Portland Council of Governments.
Good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, members of the committee. I'm Kim Cook. I'm here on behalf of the Mayor's Coalition, testifying in strong support of LD 1733. Please forgive my unconventional workspace at the moment as I was waiting for one of our children at a doctor's appointment. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Mayor's Coalition and our support for this bill. The Mayor's Coalition is a nonpartisan group formed in 2012, currently includes the mayors of 9 Maine communities, including Augusta, Biddeford, Lewiston, Portland, Rockland, Saco, Sanford, South Portland, and Westbrook, with a combined population of nearly 250,000 people. The coalition advocates for state and federal policies that recognize the important role that Maine cities play in providing vital services to Maine people all across our state, and the positive impact Maine cities have on the economic strength of our state. The coalition seeks to work in partnership with Maine state and federal elected officials to meet the needs of Maine people. The coalition has several policy priorities this year, which have been priorities for a number of years, and I think many of you share these priorities. And they include funding for infrastructure, housing and homelessness, broadband expansion, and funding for climate change and adaptation. We applaud the governor's plan set forth in LD 1733 as it allocates resources to many of our top priorities, and we urge the legislature to support the bill. We stand ready to coordinate with our partners at the state and county levels of government to ensure that available funding is put toward all of our shared goals. We thank you for the opportunity to testify and provide our comments, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Cook from the Mayor's Coalition? Not seeing any. Thank you for making yourself available.
Thank you.
Next, we have Christina Egan of the Greater Portland Council of Governments. And then after that, I'm going to bring in a number of folks from aquaculture, seafood industry type folks. So Ms. Egan, welcome.
Thank you so much, Senator Breen. And thank you, Representative Peirce and members of the committee for having this hearing today. I'm Christina Egan, and I'm offering testimony on behalf of the Greater Portland Council of Governments as its executive director, and also for Sandy Carter, who is our president and the chair of the Gray Town Council. We are in full support of LD 1733. The Greater Portland Council of Governments serves 30 cities and towns, ranging from New Gloucester to Old Orchard Beach, and also from Sebago Lake out to Casco Bay. We help cities and towns do things together that are really difficult for them to do alone. And in this, we focus on addressing regional challenges that are also statewide challenges, including improving public transportation and transportation, expanding housing choices, improving broadband access, and building community and climate resiliency in our state. We also lead several statewide efforts, including staffing the Maine Broadband Coalition and working to promote electric vehicles through the statewide Maine Communities, Clean Communities Program. And lastly, working with DHHS and DOT on providing mobility options for people in the rural areas of our state. We are fully in support of the proposed allocations. These will boost economic recovery, resilience, and infrastructure in our investment state. We are especially pleased with the proposed investments in resilient infrastructure and resilient energy projects. In addition, the affordable housing pieces are really important for a market that throughout Maine has become unbearably hot for so many people that are working families. I'd like to say on the side that there are 3 positions, staffing positions, that are proposed by the Governor's Office of Policy and Innovation and Future that will support the proposed investments for resiliency and for affordable housing in the Governor's change package for the biennial budget. And we feel like those 3 positions are really important for making the whole package work. There are other elements, many elements in this in 1733 that we support, including supporting road and bridge maintenance, broadband, and more small business relief. Our region has been really disproportionately hurt in the tourism industry, our restaurants, our hospitality, as well as our entrepreneurs and new Mainers. They still need some business support. We've worked with the state as a partner in helping to implement previous relief packages, especially the CARES funds. We helped distribute and were a conduit for $67 million in small business grants. We had health ambassadors that were helping people on the beaches wear their masks. And we also launched with the Maine Office of Tourism, a Maine Outdoor Dine PR campaign to keep our restaurants afloat. The key point I want to leave you with today is that organizations like ours that are regional in nature are great partners for the state as you seek to implement this bill. We are a connector between all levels of government, between the federal, the county, and the local levels, as well as the state. And where many of the investments that you plan to make through this bill and other parts of the budget, the municipalities are really where the rubber hits the road. And if Sandy Carter were here in person, she asked me to convey that small towns really need regional organizations like ours in particular, just because they don't have enough horses to carry the carriage. And so we offer the kind of expertise that can really help guide some of these investments as they hit the ground. Many of Maine's ARPA investments can be successfully implemented by regional partners, and our experience and our capacity for regional implementation of state strategies isn't unique. It's shared by many of the sister agencies across the state that have also successfully partnered with the state on these programs. We urge you to support LD 1733 and continue to work with the Mills administration to find additional opportunities to engage Maine's regionally based organizations in ways that maximize the benefits of this extraordinary federal funding opportunity. And as Travis said, align our different levels of government that are trying to make the most of these opportunities. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Egan. Any questions for Ms. Egan of Greater Portland Council of Governments? Not seeing any. Thank you for joining us. Next, we have a number of people who represent industries that are, well, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Industries that start in the water, I guess, is the simplest thing. So first, I'm going to take Fiona DeKoning, and then Lucas Holden, and then Sebastian Bell, and then Kim Hamilton. So Fiona DeKoning. You are on mute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, honourable members of the Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name is Fiona DeKoning. I am the owner of Acadia Aqua Farms and I live in Bar Harbor. I stand before you today to testify for the proposed legislation, specifically Part 5, and within that, the only initiative for the Bureau of Public Health. The initiative can be found on page 33 of the ARP document within Part 5. The state DMR has outlined in their testimony the efficiencies and improvements to the monitoring for human pathogens and biotoxins in shellfish. I am here to underscore the importance this investment could have for the men and women who work in the shellfish harvesting and aquaculture industries, and in particular for those in the Down East region of the coast of Maine. For Maine shellfish to be enjoyed and valued as it is in the United States market and beyond, the safety of the seafood has to be unquestionable. That it is so trusted in the market is due to the excellent, consistent work of the Public Health Bureau. There is a lot of work going on into making sure that all the shellfish sold is safe to enjoy. The ability for testing and monitoring currently favors the southern part of our coast, so that the samples taken from our region here must be transported to Booth Bay to be tested and read. The travel time doubles the length of time we wait for results. This has direct economic consequences to the growers and harvesters in our region. For clam harvesters, it can mean that an area that is closed to harvest may not open in time for a busy holiday weekend, and so they miss the opportunity of the higher demand and a higher price for their product. For growers, it means that customers have to wait days to receive their order, or maybe lose the order to another supplier. If you multiply this by the number of people affected and the number of different public health events that are managed, you can see that this investment in the equipment to shorten the turnaround time or increase the accuracy of monitoring would bring a corresponding multiplier of positive economic impact to these industries. Climate change is driving a lot of change in many things along the coast, but there are some exciting new opportunities developing for aquaculture in the Down East region. Several organizations are exploring with local municipalities how to incorporate these diverse strategies into the communities to add economic resilience. For these opportunities to be viable, we will need the Public Health Bureau to be able to accommodate the testing and monitoring that will be required from the Down East region. For the long-term success of our wild or farm shellfish industries, it is imperative that our Public Health Bureau be well managed, forward-thinking, and appropriately funded. We are fortunate indeed that here in Maine, we already have those first two on the list. Please help us achieve the third. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. DeConing? Not seeing any. Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us today. Mr. Holden, you are next, and then Mr. Bell, and then Ms. Hamilton.
Hi there, Senator Breen, Representative Pierce, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. My name is Luke Holden. I'm the founder and CEO of Luke's Lobster and Cape Seafood. We're a vertically integrated seafood company that is a premier Maine lobster and crab buyer and processor here in the state, and a premier Maine lobster marketer globally. And I am testifying in support of LD 1733 and specifically to Part B, and within that, the only initiative for the Department of Marine Resources. This initiative can be found on the bottom of page 3 of the ARP document within Part B. During the pandemic, in order to support the Maine fishing communities that depend on Cape Seafood and Luke's Lobster for our marketplace, we had to make significant and unplanned investments. Human safety was our top priority, and the investment in PPE and process modifications to ensure adequate distance between employees was significant and unplanned. Prior to the pandemic, the majority of our sales were to the food service sector, as prior to the pandemic, 80% of seafood in the US was eaten outside of individuals' homes. So we had to pivot into grocery and direct to consumer overnight to keep the marketplace open for our Maine fishing communities. Again, these investments were unplanned and significant. We now find ourselves behind the gun as we did not invest in failing systems like refrigeration, electrical upgrades, enhancing broadband quality, and yard paving. While these may seem simple, these deferred maintenance items now jeopardize the fate of our business and our ability to be a best-in-class buyer, processor, employer, and marketer of Maine harvested seafood. This funding would allow us to make targeted, well-considered investments that will enable us to persist and continue to manage through these exceptionally tough economic conditions. I hope you will support DMR in requesting $10 million for seafood processing needs within LD 1733. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Holden from the committee? Not seeing any. Thank you for joining us today. Next, we have Sebastian Bell from the Aquaculture Association.
Thank you, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, honorable members of the committee. My name is Sebastian Bell. I am the Maine Aquaculture Association Executive Director. I am not, as is my tradition before your committee, going to read my testimony. I leave it to you to read it, but I will say that I would like to support in particular the testimony of Annie Salikas and Patrice McCarron, who came before me, who are fellow Working Waterfront Association executive directors, and I think that they said much of what I would say better than I would have said. I am here specifically to support two initiatives under the bill. In part 5 on page 33, the funding for the Public Health Division, which one of my members, Fiona DeKonig, so eloquently supported. And in part B, page 3, the second initiative, that is the $10 million for the development and implementation of a competitive grant program. And I believe that's what Lucas was referring to. I want to just close by saying that the COVID-19 pandemic affected many sectors in the Maine economies, and I know that you will be asked to support many different initiatives for many different sectors. But the seafood business in particular was hit hard because over 80% of all seafood consumed in this country is consumed in restaurants, and restaurants were effectively closed by COVID-19. So our markets evaporated almost overnight. When COVID-19 shut down the restaurants, many of our businesses had to come forward with new and creative ways to market to the sector. And again, I think Luke has explained how that had an impact on his business, and for our aquaculture businesses, the same thing happened. We deferred investments that we would have made to build the business to value add, and focused those small dollars that we had to invest on how we would get our markets back and our product to consumers. The proposal that's put forward for the DMR seafood processing and business infrastructure part of the sector is particularly important because that would help our small growers in particular who don't have the kinds of resources and capital available to them that perhaps larger companies do, to be able to refocus and focus on value adding and continue to build the value of their business. So I want to thank you today for your time and ask that you support those two initiatives that I highlighted. And I will shut up now because you guys have a long day.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Mr. Bell? Not seeing any. Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us. Kim Hamilton is next.
Good afternoon, everyone. Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, distinguished members of the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee. My name is Kim Hamilton. I am the president of Focus Maine. We're a private sector-led organization focused on catalyzing jobs in 3 of Maine's high growth areas: agriculture, aquaculture, and life sciences. So a little bit bigger than aquaculture, but very happy to be included with my colleagues here. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of LD 1733. When we launched our programmatic work 3 years ago, we did so with a deep understanding of Maine's assets and global economic trends. We knew then, as we know now, that Maine holds tremendous untapped potential to unlock good jobs for people who call Maine home. But to fully realize that potential, there are barriers we cannot remove on our own. An investment of this magnitude with such strategic foresight is a game changer and will have a lasting impact well beyond the horizons of those of us in the hearing today. Along with many other organizations, Focus Maine has shared our own recommendations and experiences to inform this plan. I would like to underscore our support for the proposed legislation in total, with a special focus on innovation, workforce, and infrastructure. Just 3 short points here. First, innovation investments are a critical need in Maine. 2 days ago, Wallet Hub released its annual rankings of state economies based on 3 categories: economic activity, economic health, and innovation potential. Maine ranked 44th overall and 42nd in innovation potential. Our peers in Massachusetts and New Hampshire ranked 1 and 3 respectively. So the proposed investments are an important signal to the private sector that Maine is ready to compete and is fertile ground for innovation. Second, through our partnerships, we are helping to strengthen businesses that are looking to scale and expand their markets. An appropriately skilled workforce is essential to unlocking their growth. Expanding experiential learning through internships and apprenticeships, as you've heard earlier, and deepening the connections between our education system and industry is at the heart of retaining and attracting talent, and it works. We're in a global battle for talent, and this plan gives Maine a fighting chance. And lastly, the proposed investments in infrastructure and processing in our heritage industries will help ensure that the quality of the farm, the quality at the farm and on the boat reaches the consumer's plate, and the potential to value add can happen here in Maine. So these investments are critical for the future competitiveness of Maine and the resilience of these industries, and will deepen the impact of our investments and help us create good jobs. So we stand in strong support of LD 1733. I submitted more detailed testimony and very happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Hamilton from the committee? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you for joining us, and thank you
all
for being so patient. Next, I'm going to have Roger Kraus from the Maine Water Utilities Association, and then Richard Burbank from Evergreen Home Performance, and Kate Knox from the Brewers Guild. Mr. Kraus, go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Pierce, and members of the Committee on Appropriations. My name is Roger Kraus. I am the General Manager of the Kennebec Water District in Waterville. And I'm here today representing the Maine Water Utilities Association in support of LD 1733, particularly in the portion of the bill that proposes to allocate $25 million for critical public drinking water infrastructure. Maine Water Utilities Association has been around since 1925 and represents Maine 109 water utilities in the state of Maine. The need for investment in water systems in Maine is great. The US EPA estimates Maine's 20-year infrastructure need in drinking water at $1.62 billion. And that's about $81 million a year. And there's, as many of you may be aware, there's been lots of press recently about PFAS and other contaminants in drinking water that are affecting Maine public water systems. Additionally, there's significant amounts of aging infrastructure throughout the state of Maine that needs to be replaced or has failed and needs upgrading. This $25 million investment would help us reach some of those highest priority projects while maintaining affordable water rates for our customers. This funding would go through the Maine CDC's drinking water program, through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, which has provided more than $325 million in funding over the last 20 years. However, the need through that fund is always greater than the requests are always greater than the available funding. Last year alone, the funding requests were $72 million, and the total available funding was only $21 million. And that's similar things that have occurred in previous years where, every year the need is greater than the available funding. So we encourage you to support safe drinking water and investment in Maine's economy through the replacement of aging infrastructure and support of LD 1733. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Kraus? Not seeing any. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Next is Richard Burbank and then Kate Knox. I think you're on mute.
Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. My name is Richard Burbank. I am the president and founder of Evergreen Home Performance, a company that does energy audits, insulation, and air sealing, otherwise known as weatherization for residential customers. I'm not really in a hot attic today, but I thought I'd have a little fun. We do employ 24 employees, and they are working in hot attics these days. And I think we're seeing the early effects of climate change as we are trying to weatherize homes. We have locations in Rockland and Portland. I live in Falmouth. I support LD 1733 and appreciate how it will positively impact weatherization in Maine and the small businesses like ours that provide it. So we have 24 employees, and we're regularly recognized as one of the biggest providers of weatherization in the home energy savings program at Efficiency Maine. And I consider 24 pretty small. And the industry has been shrinking over the past decade to the point that we have only 6 or 7 companies like mine or smaller doing half of all the Efficiency Maine home energy savings program weatherizations. And only 10 or so more companies are helping to bring on another 25% of all the weatherizations in the home energy savings program. We have 500,000 homes in Maine, and many of them need weatherization. We're feeling the impacts of climate change right now. It's very tangible this summer, and the urgency to dramatically expand weatherization, grow small businesses like ours, and provide important, well-paying jobs has never been greater, not to mention the fact that it makes Maine more livable for those of all incomes. It's very tough to survive a hot winter, a cold winter and a hot summer as the summers have been getting hotter if you have inadequate weatherization in your home. However, even though business is busy for us, we've just overcome the business challenges of the pandemic. And even though it does need to ramp up dramatically, it's going to be challenging for us to grow. And we have a very limited workforce facing our industry. LD 1733 offers several things that will help increase the pace of weatherization over the next 3 years. But in particular, the $50 million of funding to Efficiency Maine would be a really timely boost to expand the pace. And it's directed to residences as well as buildings of municipalities, schools, and businesses. The $8 million Clean Energy Partnership is also another important element for workforce development, and the $105 million funding for training through CTE and community colleges so we can hire new workers in this industry. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide testimony, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burbank. We really appreciate you joining us, and thanks for your patience. Any questions for Mr. Burbank? Not seeing any. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kate Knox. I think she's here today representing the Brewers Guild. Ms. Knox? Kate, I don't know if you are, I'm not hearing you, so I'm not sure if you're having technical difficulty. So I think I'm going to move on and come back to Kate because I can't hear you. If you want to send me a chat or something, that might help. She says she'll call back in. Okay, so in the meantime, we're going to have Sarah Austin, and then Peter Gore, and then Kate Blackford. So Sarah Austin, go right ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the AFA committee. My name is Sarah Austin. I'm a tax and budget analyst at the Maine Center for Economic Policy. And I'm here to testify neither for nor against LD 1733. This pandemic, as many folks before me have mentioned, has had grave consequences for many Maine households and businesses, leading to greater housing and food insecurity, challenges securing child and elder care, disproportionate health consequences for communities of color, and loss of livelihood for tens of thousands of Mainers and small business owners. But these impacts have not been shared equally. Certain populations and industries have borne the brunt of economic impacts, and these communities and industries should be centered in the state's use of ARPA funding. The principle of matching these funds proportionately to those affected is supported and encouraged by the Treasury's guidance for these funds. The Treasury is very clear throughout its guidance that this money should be used to offset harmful economic and other impacts of the pandemic and be used in a way that's proportionate to the harm that was experienced. This means funding policies and investments that will undo economic damage experienced by families, communities, and businesses most vulnerable and most harmed by the pandemic and its economic consequences. So with that, MESEP is very supportive of several proposals within this very expansive bill. Firstly, the very targeted proposals to support businesses that were left out of federal support programs, and also specifically targeting businesses that are from communities that are less represented in the business community. Parts E and F are ones that we support, and as well as very targeted workforce development proposals like those seen in Part O and other apprenticeship programs that we're very supportive of too, as getting folks back into the workforce is still a very crucial project that we have to take on here in Maine. We're also very supportive of Parts R and Parts S, and these are investments in childcare within the state, expanding Maine's pre-K system, and also expanding capital investment for childcare centers. And for this, we also support building out proposals that would address the low wages within the childcare system, and also the affordability of childcare for parents being an important part of the entire needs for the childcare system here in the state. And for Part S, this is really crucial investments to improve water infrastructure across the state that has lifelong benefits for young kids in making sure that water is not exposing them to lead and other harmful toxins. So with that, we do also have several parts of this proposal that we're concerned with. I will skip much of this, but there's more in the written testimony. Parts B, G, and J in particular, these are the fundings for industry and research and development programs within this proposal that is a pretty significant amount of money, over $100 million. And the Treasury's guidance is pretty clear in setting the leisure and hospitality industries as benchmarks. And on the whole, in Maine, the food and accommodation services sector dropped its GDP output in 2020 by about 31%, whereas when you look at the forestry, fishing, hunting, and agriculture sector of the economy, they dropped by only 0.9% over the same period, and it's less than the...
Yes, Austin. Yeah, your time is passed, so if you could summarize.
Sure.
Thanks.
Which is less than the average of a 5.6% drop for all industries. So there may be some that are particularly acutely affected, but we would hope that this is very targeted towards those that have actually experienced that kind of decline. So with that, I will direct the committee to my written testimony, and thank you all so much for your time and your service in considering this bill.
Thank you very much, Ms. Austin. Any questions for Ms. Austin from the panelists? Not seeing any. Thank you very much for joining us, and thanks for your patience. Next, we have Peter Gore from the Maine State Chamber. Mr. Gore, welcome.
Thank you, Senator Breen and Representative Person, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. Dana Connors had intended to be here this afternoon to deliver our testimony. Unfortunately, he had to leave, but he felt it was important that we be on the record, and so I'm here to deliver his remarks on his behalf. My name is Dana Connors. As president of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, I am pleased to speak before you representing our members and a network of businesses across the state of Maine in general support of LD 1733. Maine was very fortunate to have already had a 10-year strategic plan in place when the coronavirus pandemic struck in Maine in March of 2020. We were further advantaged when Governor Mills commissioned the Economic Recovery Committee to address the impact of the pandemic with a goal in mind of sustaining Maine's people and continuing to grow Maine's economy. The 37-member Economic Recovery Committee, and I'll stop here and say that of which Dana served as a member of, comprised of business leaders, economists, and legislators. They were tireless in their efforts, creating recommendations to move Maine forward. The ERC used the 10-year strategic plan's guiding principles to implement these recommendations with the intended goal of serving our people, our economy, both today and into the future. Those guiding principles included innovation, talent attraction, and development, internet access, early childcare and development, and housing, to name just a few. We applaud the work of the ERC. It is clearly work that cannot be dismissed or denied. While we understand that some changes may need to be made, we support these recommendations that have been brought forth. We urge the committee to approve Governor Mills' Jobs and Recovery Plan in such a way that will ensure the full legislature recognizes the immediate need and assures the expediency of getting the funding into the economy as quickly as possible. As a state, we must keep in mind that prior to the pandemic, the #1 issue was supply and demand of workforce. The pandemic has worked to exacerbate existing workforce problems, and quick action is required. Continued progress is essential in getting our state back to what we would describe as normal. This plan is essential to our state's progress. Therefore, we must have a sense of urgency in putting Governor Mills' Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan to work, aiding in faster recovery for our state, our economy, and our people. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide you with our comments this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Gore from any members of the panel? Not seeing any. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kate Blackford, and then we're going to loop back to Kate Knox.
Thank you so much, and my apologies to the committee for being off video. I can't seem to have my remarks and my video on at the same time today. I'm having some kind of technical
No problem.
So thank you so much, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs for the opportunity to share my input with you today on LD 1733, which is neither for nor against. My name is Kate Blackford, and I'm the Public Policy Director for the Maine People's Alliance. MPA is Maine's largest community action organization with over 32,000 members across the state. And our mission is to create a world where everyone has what they need, contributes what they can, and no one is left behind. To facilitate sharing this information with you in 3 minutes, I'm going to direct you to my written testimony, which has a great level of detail on the policy priorities that we think are important to build into LD 1733 and which sections of the guidance from Treasury really apply and demonstrate the alignment between those existing priorities before the legislature and the use of ARPA funding. I do want to respond really quickly to the testimony before me that while there are many great investments that are included in the governor's economic recovery plan and in the 10-year economic plan, this legislation passed by Congress is really intended to address COVID and the economic harms that it has created and the long-standing economic disparities that it has exacerbated. And so while there are strengths and weaknesses in the recovery plan from the governor, I don't believe that it should be used as a template for how the ARPA funds should be used. Neither do I see that as being in alignment with the guidance that we've gotten very specifically from the Treasury. I do want to ask you to please include and expand specific investments that are in this proposal in 1733 to ensure the well-being of people who have been historically deprioritized and left out. Specifically, I hope that you will work together with your colleagues to fully fund the implementation of LD 1548 to begin to address the racial disparities in Maine's health outcomes. We have a long and broad history of state-sanctioned discrimination and creating systems that prioritize and benefit white people over people of color. And we can see the results of those policies in the racial disparities in our health outcomes, including the worst racial disparities on COVID in the nation at one point last summer, as well as in our educational attainment, criminal justice involvement, worker rights, access to housing, employment history, and wealth accumulation. And my written testimony goes into more detail on this. I also would urge you to fund the development of green affordable housing using the model of LD 1656 to help address our most urgent housing needs while growing the capacity and skilled workforce for green building. The model of 1656 offers a really bold solution to address 3 intertwined crises that are facing our state: a severe lack of affordable housing, a lack of jobs and skilled workers in our green building sector, and the contributions our buildings are making to climate change. And again, my testimony goes into much more detail on this, but this is a really critical investment and an opportunity to use the $50 million that the governor has earmarked for affordable housing to really move forward 3 important issues in the state. We also believes that this ARPA funding is an incredible opportunity to strengthen the foundation of our childcare system. If we as a state are going to recover from the economic and social harms of the past 14, 15 months, it's essential that we transform our early childhood systems. The work to increase wages and establish new, stronger foundations for both the essential workforce and the care that they're providing in LD 1652 and LD 1712 are really important first steps towards addressing the challenges we face in our early childhood systems. I would urge you too to support the families who are providing essential care to their loved ones. Family caregivers are providing essential, often deeply meaningful, yet really challenging roles in our communities that save us funding in our healthcare system. Unfortunately,
Ms. Blackford,
yes.
Your time is we're at time, so if you might summarize, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for the chance to speak with you today. And I urge you to continue the difficult work that you're doing to address the harms that have been created by COVID and especially the exacerbation of longstanding economic disparities. Thank you very much for your work and for the chance to speak with you today.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Blackford? Not seeing any. Thank you for your patience. Thanks for being here. Next, we're going to loop back to, I hope I have Kate Knox in here. All right, we're going to go to Josh Broder is with us, and I'm going to try to get back to Kate Knox. Josh, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Senator Breen, Representative Pierce, and members of the Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. My name is Joshua Broder. I currently serve as the CEO of Telson, a Maine-based network deployment and professional services firm on a mission to build America's information infrastructure. Relevant to this discussion, last year I served as co-chair of the Governor's Economic Recovery Committee, which was established to develop specific policy recommendations to stabilize Maine economy and bridge the gap between our pandemic damaged economy and the vision outlined by Maine's 10-year economic strategy. And I'm here in support of LD 1733 in that capacity. 1 year ago, Governor Mills charged our group of approximately 40 business, government, educational, nonprofit, and community leaders with figuring out the best way to make plans ahead of the immediate emergency to get back on track with that plan. And this was a nonpartisan group. Our final report recommended growing our economy by investing in innovation and entrepreneurs, by developing and attracting our workforce, by building up our broadband and transportation infrastructure, and sustaining Maine's people, specifically by creating access to training and career opportunities, to transform our childcare systems, to improve housing affordability, and to address structural inequities in our economy. The ERC at the time also called for additional federal funding to support these recommendations. And now that that stimulus has arrived, it's led to the historic announcement of the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan by Governor Mills this May. I'm pleased to see the plan prioritizes for Maine the issues elevated by the ERC and puts down a strong foundation for immediate recovery for long-term growth for our state. I want to specifically highlight the plan's investment in innovation and R&D, which are essential. Maine needs to make investments that are transformational by unlocking the innovators and entrepreneurs to help us prosper in a future knowledge-based, technology-driven global economy and unleash the entrepreneurial and innovation capacity of our people and businesses. The pandemic's impact on early stage, high growth businesses has highlighted the importance of nurturing a better entrepreneurial ecosystem that cultivates nationally competitive, growth-oriented businesses that are innovating to meet new markets and economic circumstances. Maine is among the bottom 5 states in the country for its investments in R&D as a percentage of GDP, which hampers our ability to grow sustaining businesses for the future and draw new and necessary skilled workers and their families to our state. And the ERC believes that driving investment in R&D to be in line with levels seen in other states relative to their size will create strong returns for decades to come, on a number of dimensions. And so I urge you to vote to pass on this bill and take the first steps forward on a better future for our state. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Broder from the committee? Not seeing any. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And finally, Kate Knox. Thank you, Kate, for hanging in there and for coming back a few times. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, members of the committee. I truly appreciate your patience with my tech difficulties. My name is Kate Knox. I'm an attorney at Bernstein Schur. I'm here today on behalf of my client, the Maine Brewers Guild, who is a nonprofit trade association representing nearly every brewery in the state, which is now numbering above 150. And we're here today to encourage you to support LD 1733, an act to provide allocations for the distribution of state fiscal recovery funds. Maine brewers have worked closely with this administration and agencies such as the Department of Agriculture and DECD over the past year, and the assistance, engagement, and communication we've had with these agencies has been invaluable. Toward the end of 2020, we worked specifically with the Department of Agriculture to promote a program which allowed breweries, amongst other businesses, to seek funding for infrastructure investments they had to make in order to keep their businesses afloat in the pandemic economy. One specific piece of equipment many brewers had to invest in was a canning line. As sales shifted away from draft beer and consumers could only purchase bottles or cans in most instances, the investments were critical to staying in business and literally saved many Maine breweries in this pandemic. As we look ahead, the heritage industries in Maine, including the broadly defined food industry in Part B, are partners in our long-term success. And we note the support for these industries in this bill, as well as the continued support for the Department of Agriculture funding. And we want to ensure that this industry can forge ahead with renewed vigor and capitalize on the infrastructure and expertise that we have spent decades building. And we're able to move forward again with the Department of Agriculture's help in the pandemic. So we urge your support of the bill, and specifically Part B, creating the investments in heritage industries. And I'd be happy to take any questions. And again, thank you for your patience through my challenges.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Knox, representing the Brewers Association, Brewers Guild? Not seeing any. Thank you very much for hanging in there and for coming. Next, we have Michael McKernan. Mr. McKernan represents the Jackson Labs, and I'm gonna bring in a few more people. So Mr. McKernan, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the committee. My name is Michael McKernan. I'm the Director of Government and Community Relations at the Jackson Laboratory here in Bar Harbor. LD 1733 is an interconnected system of funding priorities, and the Jackson Laboratory supports the full plan as developed over months, in large part by the Economic Recovery Committee. JAX recently testified before this committee on components reflected in Part G of LD 1733, which is focused on funding research and development, innovation, and public-private partnerships. Funding R&D catalyzes innovation, infrastructure, and jobs. In addition to those well-described benefits, R&D investment has far-reaching social and educational impact, especially in this moment of pandemic recovery. To be candid, meaningful research education programs require the presence of vigorous biomedical research and infrastructure. And here are 3 examples. Number 1, since 2014, JAX has provided professional development to 73 Maine high school STEM teachers from 67 high schools, including CTEs. JAX has specifically recruited teachers from schools in disadvantaged communities and has supported teachers in every Maine county. 2 of Maine's 2021 County Teachers of the Year, Kevin Milady from Lawrence High School in Somerset County and Andrew Kirby from Presque Isle High School in Aroostook County, are currently partnering with JAX. Second example, in just the last 6 years, over 7,400 Maine high school students have participated in a JAX-developed genomics course, including hands-on labs and computer-based modules. Students learn the science and ethics of genomics and precision medicine. The course is implemented statewide. For example, 600 students at Oxford Hills High School, 600 at Winslow High School, and 250 at Dexter Regional High School. Even in smaller classes, our impact in underserved schools like Penquis Valley High School in LaGrange, Van Buren High School, and Woodland Senior Junior High School in Baileyville is significant. Number 3, JAX has developed a 2-year post-baccalaureate program for students underrepresented in biomedicine, including those who are the first generation in their family to attend college. Take, for example, Courtney Hatton, who attended Metanocook Academy and is a first-generation graduate of UMaine and a participant in the TRIO program. Courtney will complete a post-bac fellowship in Bar Harbor researching gene therapy approaches in mouse models of neurodegenerative disorders in humans. Courtney's research education has given her the skills and confidence to continue her research career at JAX. These examples demonstrate how investment in R&D not only propel research, it also expands our capacity to offer educational programs to a broad and diverse audience. The impact of these programs can be immediate and short-term, providing students an igniting spark of confidence and passion to pursue a career in STEM. In conclusion, I'll invite members of the committee to review the rest of this testimony submitted in writing, which provides evidence that state investments in R&D achieve the goals of LD 1733, including long-term growth for Maine people and jumpstart research and development. Thank you for the opportunity. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. McKernan from the committee? Not seeing any. Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us. Next, we have Kim Humphrey of Community Connect Maine, and then we're going to have Steve Sanders, and Steve represents our Katahdin. So, Ms. Humphrey.
Hello, my name is Kim Humphrey. I'm from Auburn, and I am the parent of an adult named Dan. He has severe autism and he lives in a group home. I'm also the founder and president of Community Connect Maine. I'm testifying neither for nor against. Please include funding in LD 1733 to assure that LD 1573, the long-term care workforce bill, is fully funded to 125% of minimum wage. On Monday, you and all the legislators received a petition in support of fully funding this legislation from over 1,700 people from the disability, aging, and mental health sectors, collected in a short period of time from all 16 counties. So there's a lot of support for the need to fully fund this legislation. If you decide not to include funding for future wages from this resource, this fund could be used to provide retroactive funding to sectors that have been below minimum wage. And I know that some sectors are only receiving $11.21 from the state. It's been below minimum wage for 3 years. You could also include bonuses for direct care workers that have been there for a long time, and that's not a long-term commitment. Also include funding to accurately assess what's happening in the population now and in the future. And if you could make a more informed choice now, if the department could answer these questions already. What are they doing to measure specifically how people are doing that are on the wait list? On how many people can't find services that are offered them? Do we know what happens to people who are losing placements? How many people is that? Who are they? My guess is that it's those that have the highest needs, but rather than guess, let's measure it. And where are they going? I would suspect that those people are the hardest people to find other options, but let's measure it. How many homes and programs are closing? What measure needs? We measure needs and unmet needs, but we can use that data to create, make sure that the new model that they want to create fits the current needs with funding. The governor has only included funding to bring direct care wages up to minimum wage, and the department says that's sufficient for Maine based on various studies done with information from out of state, based on aspirational desire to create a reform system in the future, and based on stakeholder input from various committees. And I'm on one of those committees, and while I fully approve of the aspirations, currently the future plans are in a vague form at best, but mostly we don't know what the new system really will look like. In the meantime, group homes are consolidating and closing. People that are eligible and funded for services can't receive them. A large coalition of people from the disability, aging, and mental health sectors have united and are expressing what is the reality on the ground in Maine. They say minimum wage can't compete with retail and fast food services. Are they wrong? These services represent tens of thousands of people. Who do you listen to? What if the department's wrong? Include funding to accurately assess current and future service system situation. And please include funding to stabilize the workforce according to the recommendations of the people on the ground, LG 1573. And thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate it. Any questions for Ms. Humphrey? Not seeing any. Thank you so much. Next is Steve Sanders of Our Katahdin.
Yes, thank you, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee. I am Steve Sanders, the Director of Mill Site Redevelopment for Our Katahdin, and I am here to testify on the sections of this bill that will most encourage the long-term economic growth and provide future prosperity to the people of the state of Maine. Our Katahdin is undertaking the redevelopment of a 1,400-acre former Great Northern Paper Company mill site. We need not look any further than to the historical development of our mill site to understand the importance that research and development and innovation has played in growing and sustaining our economy. Innovations that allowed wood pulp to be cooked down and made into paper led to the pulp and paper boom in Maine that today still sustains the economy of rural areas. Previously, paper production was limited by the amount of discarded rags available, which was the raw material for paper, before innovation allowed our abundant forests to provide for the growing demand for paper of a nation that was in the midst of the second industrial revolution. When the growth of paper demand waned in the 1950s and 60s, Great Northern built a 50,000 square foot engineering and research building on our campus. Innovations and new products that percolated and boiled over in that building led to the construction of the largest paper machine in the world in 1971, right here in Millinocket, Maine. When I was in high school, Great Northern employed more than 4,000 people, owned 2.2 million acres of land, and had the largest privately owned hydroelectric system in the world. All of this was accomplished because a little spot on the globe that was located near a tremendous waterway, the largest contiguous forest east of the Mississippi, and the consumer markets of the US Northeast, was able to turn trees into paper. All of that started in 1867 with a US patent on the sulfite process. Jump ahead to last Saturday's announcement of a water-cooled data center located right on top of where the first paper machines were built along Millinocket Stream. Because of the state of Maine's investment in the three-ring binder, Millinocket now lies along the information superhighway. This foundation, along with the innovation and data center cooling technology, will allow Millinocket to be host to the largest data center in New England. Again, good investment in future-proof infrastructure, coupled with innovation, has once again provided opportunity to a little town in rural Maine and will lead to transformative economic growth. Looking forward, continual research into wood fiber will lead to the next generation of forest products, which Maine can capitalize on. The fourth industrial revolution will focus on removing harmful chemicals from our environment. Once again, trees contain ingredients that will be desirable for future generations. From carbon sequestration from biochar, displacing steel and concrete with mass timber, replacing petroleum products with bioplastics and biofuels, or the many uses of nanocellulose, the next industries of tomorrow are either in the early stages or on the cusp of the next innovation. And Maine's forests are the supply chain. I urge you to double down on investments in research and development and other programs that will stimulate innovation. These investments, combined with the strategic allocations of funds from the American Rescue Plan Act, will lead to great economic developments and provide for the future prosperity of all Mainers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Sanders from the committee? Not seeing any. Thank you so much for your patience and for joining us today. Next, I'm going to move over a number of folks from the healthcare sector. So let's see. Lisa Harvey McPherson, Mallory Shaughnessy, if there's anybody else from either the healthcare or public health sector, would you mind just raising your electronic hand? Oh, thank you. All right, Nadine Grasso, I'm going to move you over. Catherine Vizina, I'm going to move you over. Orion Breen, I'm going to move you over. All right. So, Ms. Harvey McPherson, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Thank you for asking.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, committee members. My name is Lisa Harvey McPherson, and I'm actually extending my testimony. My colleague Jeff Austin had to leave, as did my colleague Sarah Calder. So if I go maybe one more minute, I'm going to consolidate all of our testimony. Tonight, I'm actually beginning my testimony representing the Maine Nursing Action Coalition. The Action Coalition was originally formed with funding from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and much of our work has focused on nursing workforce data and nursing faculty. And today we're a subsidiary of Omni Nursing Leaders of Maine. The purpose of the Action Coalition testimony is to request that this bill include funding for LD 119, an act sponsored by Representative Meyer that funds the Maine Nursing Faculty Program, Faculty Loan Repayment Program. That Faculty Loan Repayment Program was actually passed in 2005, and I don't know if Representative Martin is still on. I believe I worked with him on the original language for this bill. And in 2005, we recognized the pending nursing workforce shortage that we are acutely experiencing right now, and the need for faculty to be able to increase the pipeline of nursing students to meet the workforce demand. The language passed, funding never passed, and the program has never been able to be launched by the Finance Authority of Maine. LD 119 asks for one-time $1 million in funding to create the Faculty Loan Repayment Program. And with that $1 million, we can cover the FAME administrative fee, and we would be able to cover loan repayments for 33 master's prepared nurses and 10 doctoral prepared nurses. 22 of our nursing faculty are over the age of 66 years old. We have an imminent crisis to replace these aging nurse faculty, and the loan repayment one time allows us to fundamentally reverse the aging cohort of nursing faculty in all 15 nursing education programs. There's a lot of workforce development money in this bill. I absolutely think $1 million for nursing faculty aligns with the intent of workforce development. And we are experiencing an acute nursing shortage. And we turn away hundreds of qualified nursing student applicants every year from all of our nursing education programs. People want to be nurses. The money isn't there to expand the programs in terms of faculty. On behalf of Maine Health, you will hear when you read their testimony, they too are in support of this bill, but in addition to requesting nursing faculty, they also request funding for the Doctors for Maine's Future program. Similar to nursing faculty, we also need doctors, and the Doctors for Maine's Future program funds scholarships that will help physicians practice primarily in rural Maine. And so you'll see that request in the MHA testimony. Maine Health testimony, and the Maine Hospital Association echoes nursing faculty, Doctors for Maine's Future, and a one-time request supporting all of Maine's hospitals. So I encourage you to read their testimony also. I suspect I've bumped up to 3 minutes, and so I welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Ms. McPherson. Any questions for Ms. Harvey McPherson? All right, thank you for being a triple hitter tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And next we have Catherine Vizina, and then Nadine Grosso and Sarah Woodbury, and then Orion Breen.
Thank you, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Kathy Vazina, and I'm the Policy Director for the Maine Council on Aging. We are generally in support of LD 1733, although we do recommend some amendments to this bill. An additional background and justification is presented in our written testimony, and I refer you to that as well. COVID-19 has exacerbated an already significant crisis in Maine's essential support workforce shortage, and our long-term support system is now uniformly at the brink of collapse. Essential support workers are people, almost all women, and often women of color, who work in homes, communities, and provide daily vital support to older people, people who have physical, intellectual, and developmental disabilities, and people with behavioral health challenges. Too many of these workers were left out in the cold during COVID-19. They were not prioritized for PPE or vaccinations, yet they went to work every day to protect the people they support, putting themselves and their families at risk and getting paid less than they could make at jobs in fast food and retail. These workers are now tired, and they're leaving this workforce in droves for higher paying, less demanding jobs. Low Maine care reimbursement rates make it impossible for providers to pay more to retain these workers, and when they leave, it's nearly impossible for providers to replace them. Over the last decade, we've been advocating for dramatically increased reimbursement rates to prevent a system failure. We were told there was no money, and we were told to work together to create a pathway forward. And so we've all come together from all the different sectors in support of LD 1573, and there is money. So if not now, when? When will we strengthen Maine's essential support workforce? When will we recognize the impact of sexism, racism, ableism, and ageism on how we value this workforce? The state Fiscal Recovery Fund is intended to be used to assist households, small and nonprofit businesses, to aid affected industries, and to help workers who are performing essential work during the pandemic. Thus, we urge amendments to LD 1733 to address this workforce crisis by amending Section 1 of the bill in 3 ways. First, in subsection 1, including a Part G that reads, invest in Maine's essential support workforce, and include a definition of this workforce as found in LD 1573. Second, in subsection 2 of section 1, subpart B, include a paragraph 7 that reads, implement the recommendations of the Commission to study long-term care workforce issues. And 3, in subsection 3, subpart A, include a paragraph 5 that reads, expand the availability of supports and services for older adults and adults with physical, intellectual, developmental disabilities, and people with behavioral health challenges. Please use the AARP funds to eliminate wait lists for services and to increase reimbursement rates for all essential workers in Maine. We understand that this is a one-time money, but AARP funds are intended exactly for this purpose, to be a bridge to recovery so that states have time to plan for investments they'll make in the future. And to that end, we urge you to establish a commission to study and recommend funding solutions to Maine's growing personal support workforce shortage, to find a permanent solution rather, to study how to adequately supplement funding for this workforce infrastructure to promote equity, sustainability, and predictability in the delivery of personal support. I thank you for your time, effort, and energy in this work, and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Ms. Vazina from any committee members? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you for joining us. Next is Nadine Grosso, and then Orion Breen, and then Sarah Woodbury. Ms. Grosso, you're on mute.
See, I took my video off and not the microphone. Thank you. Thank you. I'll get it right, and now you won't meet like this anymore. Good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Nadine Grosso, and I'm the Vice President of the Maine Healthcare Association. We represent the state's, most of the state's nursing homes and many assisted living facilities. And I somehow got signed up under neither for nor against, but actually we would like to support several initiatives that are in LD 1733 today. The first of which is the $15 million over the 3-year period that is earmarked for healthcare workforce development initiatives. Long-term care, as you know, has been severely hit by COVID-19. We have had workforce issues before the pandemic. They have persisted throughout the pandemic and perhaps have been made worse by the pandemic. And so we fully support the initiatives in this effort to expand partnerships, build career ladders, create opportunities for in rural healthcare settings, and of course, supporting diversification in the workforce. Things like tuition reimbursement or tuition even forgiveness, loan forgiveness, creating clear career paths for direct care staff in long-term care. I think it's just important for you to understand that those really are potential game changers for people. I mean, if someone would have said to me years ago that we're going to forgive some of your loans or we're going to have tuition, free tuition, that would have been a game changer for me as a young lady. So I just want to make sure that you understand that those provisions of the bill are really important to us. And I do think that they have the potential to have great impact. I also just wanted to say that, acknowledge the work of the department, in terms of having Joy Gould as the manager of healthcare workforce development. We really do appreciate her attention to these issues. She's been a great asset. We appreciate her accessibility and thoughtfulness. And I think that if there's a silver lining coming out of this public health emergency, it certainly is the spotlight that it's put on our workforce, the needs of our workforce. But yet finally, we have the American Rescue Plan funding that is actually going to be there to hopefully support changes that we've been looking for and working towards for a long time. I just want to briefly just comment our support for the child care initiatives in this bill. To the extent that these efforts ease the burdens on our workforce, we're very appreciative. We know that, besides wages, that childcare is certainly a concerning factor for many of the people in our workforce. And so we appreciate efforts to support our workers in that way. One of the other areas, though, that is not included in this and that we would at least like to see considered is support, if necessary, for LD 949, which is sponsored by Senator Baldacci. But basically what it does is it is implementing some immediate rate relief for long-term care facilities, and that is due to costs and expenses specific to COVID-19. And so this bill was unanimously endorsed by the Health and Human Services Committee, and really what we wanted to send the message today was that we believe there is funding available for this bill, but in the event that there is not, this could be an appropriate use of the ARP funds. And I would just also let you know that other states are doing that. Other states are using these ARP funds to provide direct rate relief to their facilities. So thank you for your. Thank you for your, I thought I had it timed right.
Perfect
so thank
timing.
you for your consideration, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Grasso? Not seeing any. Thank you for being here, and thanks for your patience. Next is Ryan Breen, and then Sarah Woodbury, and then Mallory Shaughnessy.
Well, I don't know how we might be related, but the lovely island of Ireland is a big family, so it's good to see you, cousin. Honorable members of the Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs, we've heard a lot about how LD 1733 is so important for public health. In that line, I humbly ask you to consider including Representative Morgan Riley's LD 1010 Maid Service Fellows program. We need to mobilize to recover from disaster, not just the disaster of the pandemic, but the devastation of our civic life that has been under assault for decades. The erosion of civic virtue and civility has accelerated along with the rise of the 24/7 infotainers posing as journalists and endlessly scrolling social media feeds, spewing a relentless cacophony of dog whistle doublespeak designed to rally outrage, but not to solve anything. To heal and rebuild our communities, we need actions and not words. We need community service, not lip service. We need something like the Maine Service Fellows Program. The Maine Service Fellows Program will help keep our young people in the state as they build deep community connections while tackling our most persistent challenges of workforce development, housing and keeping seniors in their homes, access to health services to improve recovery, and substance use prevention, especially in our rural areas. AmeriCorps priorities have shifted, and they have opted not to fund Maine's Recovery Coaching AmeriCorps program. This is a stark reminder of the need of a program like Maine Service Fellows that has the ability to respond to state-specific needs when they don't perfectly align with federal priorities. To put into context, Maine had 334 COVID deaths in 2020. In 2020, Maine also recorded its worst year for drug overdoses with 502 deaths. Maine Service Fellows is much needed for communities to recover from the pandemic, an opioid epidemic, and all varieties of public health and civic emergencies. I was an AmeriCorps visitor for 2 years and can attest that a commitment to service changes lives, not just the lives in the community you serve, but your own life. Along with Senator John McCain, I believe the essence of patriotism is service to a cause greater than one's self-interest. I agree with General Stanley McChrystal that serving together to solve public problems will build attachment to community and country, understanding among people who might otherwise be skeptical of one another, and a new generation of leaders who can get things done. I urge you to include and support LD 1010 and funding the Maine Service Fellows Program. Doing so will pay dividends beyond measure. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Breen? All right, thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us. Next is Sarah Woodbury and then Mallory Shaughnessy.
Thank you, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and members of the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee. My name is Sarah Woodbury. I am the Director of Advocacy for Defend Our Health, and I am here to testify in support of LD 1733. LD 1733 includes $25 million over 2 years of much needed funding, in Part S, to expand efforts to address imminent risk to public health through investment in public water system improvements, including mitigation of lead in drinking water in schools and daycares and PFAS impacts. The Health and Human Services Committee recently passed LD 129 that sets a maximum contaminant level of 20 parts per trillion for 6 PFAS in drinking water. As public water systems start to test based on this level, municipalities will need resources to mitigate where high levels are found. This funding is critical to help those municipalities. And while we fully support the $25 million for public drinking water, we would be remiss if we did not point out that over half of Maine's residents get their drinking water from residential wells, not public water systems. This is the highest percentage in any state in the nation. While it is critical to help fund public water systems, we would urge the committee to examine whether some of these funds could be utilized to help well owners who are impacted by PFAS and other contaminants. Just today in the Press Herald, it was reported that in addition to over 100 contaminated wells in Fairfield, Unity Township, and Benton, they are now investigating PFAS drinking water contamination in Oakland. As the DEP and HHS continue to test areas where sludge has been spread, the number of contaminated wells will continue to grow. Funding is needed to help with testing and remediation. Additionally, the bill calls out the need to mitigate lead and PFAS contamination. While these are both incredibly important, there are other contaminants of health concern, such as arsenic, which is prevalent in Maine's drinking water. Arsenic causes a whole host of health issues, including bladder, skin, and lung cancer. Maine's bladder cancer rate is 20% higher than the rest of the nation. Arsenic also harms children's brains. A 2014 study in Maine showed that children with even moderate levels of arsenic, those lower than the current drinking water standard, had a decline of average IQ scores of 5 to 6 points, lower than their peers that are drinking clean water. Due to its unique geology, Maine has high levels of naturally occurring arsenic, and this arsenic ends up in both public drinking water systems and residential wells. While we recognize that the funds provided by the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 have to be spent according to the terms laid out in the Act, we would urge the department and the committee to look into using funds to also help the over 50% of Mainers that rely on residential wells for their drinking water. Additionally, along with the funding for drinking water, there are many other important programs in LD 1733 that we support. So for the drinking water funding and other things like broadband, state parks, and clean energy and electric vehicles, we urge the committee to vote ought to pass on LD 1733. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Woodbury. Any questions from the committee for Ms. Woodbury? All right, thank you for your patience and thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Next is Mallory Shaughnessy. Then we're going to have Deborah Ibonwa, Gina Morin, and Eliza Townsend. Go ahead, Mallory.
Good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and esteemed members of the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee. My name is Mallory Shaughnessy, and I am a resident of Westbrook and the Executive Director of the Alliance for Addiction and Mental Health Services. On behalf of the Alliance, I am here to speak in favor of LD 733 and also to offer a few suggested amendments to the bill. We strongly support several items, especially in Part H, which includes plans to launch health workforce initiatives. Many of these would directly invest in loan pilot programs or training and credentialing initiatives that could greatly help with the recruitment and retention for the behavioral health workforce over time. These investments are critically needed. However, I also want to share concerns about what is missing and the important work that we are asking you as the Appropriations Committee to do before this budget process is finalized and LD 1733 and LD 221 are finally passed by this legislative body. The American Rescue Plan Act is intended to respond to the impacts caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, including public health and economic impacts. As businesses, Maine's behavioral health providers have been heavily impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic with increased costs and increased stresses on staff and clinicians and the exodus from the workplace of so many of these essential workers. But more importantly, our community members with mental health and substance use challenges that these providers serve have also been severely impacted. Many of our friends, family members, and neighbors have also had their mental health impacted, even those that have no prior history of these challenges. We know from prior crises such as this that these impacts will continue to reverberate for many years to come. This is a major public health impact. We urge this committee to authorize the use of ARPA funds to respond to these COVID-19 impacts, invest in the escalating need for foundational behavioral health services, and eliminate the growing wait lists. We understand it is one-time money to be spent over the next few years only, but the behavioral health impacts of the pandemic are exactly the types of immediate impacts these funds are intended to be used for as we recover from this great disruption. As you know, and as I've been before you to say many times, the foundation of our behavioral health system is not sound, and it has seen cracks and instabilities grow due to the pandemic. The budgets that have been presented to you are still missing immediate investments in several of these services. So we do ask the committee to thoroughly review and incorporate a few initiatives that have received unanimous bipartisan support from the Joint Committee on Health and Human Services. These are initiatives that invest in the workforce and foundational services for Mainers as we recover from the pandemic. Many are slated to be reviewed in the near future by the department, but we ask you to urge you to act now and not wait. We ask you to incorporate into LD 1733 the following, which are either one-time funding or bridge to the new rates that are already coming. LD 582 and LD 1147, which would invest in assertive community treatment and medication management. They are needed investments in our communities for the most fundamental services for individuals struggling with serious and persistent mental illness. LD 1424, which would change educational requirements of behavioral health professionals. This is a one-time only payment, truly, that would eliminate confusion and align desperately needed BHPs with the same qualifications and training. I would actually state that I don't know that it's actually going to have much of an economic impact in itself anyway. That's another story. LD 415, which would expand access to targeted case management for those on Maine care receiving treatment for substance use disorder. We know from studies that receiving these services to connect to housing and community supports, folks are more likely to sustain their recovery. We have also stand with other provider associations that have spoken to you today to establish a commission to study and recommend funding solutions to Maine's growing personal support workforce shortages to find a permanent solution, which is in LD 1573. There are a couple of amendments to 1733 that we would love to see added to acknowledge this crisis. I think they were mentioned by a few other people. Section 1, subsection 1, including a part that reads invest in Maine's essential support workforce.
Excuse me, Ms. Shaughnessy, we're over time.
Okay, just the last one. So I put those amendments in there, but thank you for your time and for allowing me to speak today. We respectfully urge you to invest in the foundation of our behavioral health system of care with these additional initiatives. And I thank you for your time and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you very, very much, Ms. Shaughnessy. We appreciate it. Any questions? Not seeing any. Thank you for your patience and thanks for joining us. Deborah Ibanwa, and I apologize if I messed up that name. Please go ahead and say it again. Make sure say it as you'd like to say it when you introduce yourself. Thanks.
Yeah, that was really good, actually. The I is pronounced as an E, so I was really happy that you did that. Good evening, Senator Breen, Representative Pierce, and members of the committee. I'm before you. My name is Deborah Ibonwa, and I'm before you today representing Maine Equal Justice, a nonprofit civil legal aid organization advocating for Maine's low-income populations. I'm here to ask you to invest in critical housing navigation services in order to prepare Mainers for a successful path to the workforce and to obtain sustainable economic success for Maine. In 2020, the governor convened the ERC committee made up of professionals in almost every industry, including nonprofits and representatives from municipalities, the state, and Senator Angus King, to make recommendations they believed were critical to improve Maine's economy. As one of the 11 recommendations that were made, the committee importantly names that we have been in a housing crisis for years and that a significant investment focused on assisting those who struggle with finding and securing and affording housing is key to our economic recovery strategy. Housing infrastructure is the foundation of Maine's investment in healthcare, behavioral health, education, and workforce development. The American Rescue Plan has appropriated funds specifically for rental assistance to those who need it, but there is a major gap in funding for services such as housing navigation for people who have a hard time maintaining safe, permanent housing. And here's what we're asking specifically. For you to invest $1.5 million in a housing navigation program through LD 473, which would provide housing navigators affiliated with local housing authorities, general assistance, GA programs, or nonprofit organizations to assist tenants with locating housing and assisting with the leasing up process, as well as providing consistent mentoring services to promote successful landlord-tenant relationships. This would also help unlock existing federal housing resources that Maine leaves on the table. It would support each tenant and property manager with committed housing mentors and case management, including appropriately sized and priced units and providing consistent and reliable support through the year to assist the landlord and the tenant. In fact, Project Home, a project administered by the Quality Housing Coalition, has served in the last 2 years 110 households, which is upward of 240 individuals and children. All of them would have been screened out of the standard application screening process and would likely be unhoused right now were it not for those services. And today, 98.2% of them are successful as a result of those services. And then lastly, I also want to ask this committee, I offer the following amendment to this bill under section 13A2 to just add the words "and rental assistance" so that it both covers affordable housing and financial help for folks to maintain safe and secure housing. We cannot expect to have long-term economic success as a state if so many of us are unhoused and lack basic resources. So I am in support of this bill, and I thank you for your consideration of these requests and your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Ibonwa? Not seeing any. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to go next actually to Margaret Mullen, and then to Gina Morin, and then Eliza Townsend. And Ms. Mullen, while you are signing on, I'm going to ask everybody who's in the attendee list, if you have not spoken yet and you're here to speak, please raise your electronic hand, and I will get to you in short order. Thank you so much. Ms. Mullen.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I can't get my video going. Maybe it'll click in here. Good afternoon, Senator Breen, and other members of the Appropriation Committee, including Representative Peirce. I'm a concerned resident from Phippsburg, Maine, coming to you to address and support the appropriation of the recently designated funds of $50 million to the Maine state parks. I serve on a grassroots committee for Popham Beach, which was formed to find a solution for disabled access to our local beach. Through this involvement with the state park system, I have discovered much larger problems are lying beneath the surface throughout all of our Maine parks. Paramount to the infrastructure issues are the lack of human resources to make and maintain improvements to our parks. In local towns such as Bath, Maine, Burger King is hiring unskilled high school 17-year-olds for jobs starting at $15 an hour, while our Popham Beach State Park pays $12.15 for a gate attendant, a position which is struggling to be filled, to the point where I have signed up as a volunteer to help. If the gate is not attended, revenue is lost every minute, especially during high traffic summer months. Popham Beach has the heaviest attendance of any state park in Maine, bringing in 187,000 visitors in 2019. Employment gaps from maintenance to administration are deeply affecting the current conditions and impeding future improvements in our parks. Our initial goal was to get a boardwalk installed at Popham Beach, along with beach access mats from the parking lot through the deep soft sand out to the water for disabled persons. Our relatively small project will cost around $12,000 of currently unavailable funds. Phase 1, a partial boardwalk, was installed in early spring, creatively accomplished by using repurposed boards and a team of staff from other parks at virtually no cost. The positive feedback we continue to receive from the community about this improvement has been overwhelming. Currently, it sits with no guide rails and it stops abruptly, leaving a disabled person at the end of the walkway with no place to go. Lack of funds and personnel have stalled this project, leaving it half finished. We are deeply concerned for the future of our Maine state parks. They've been limping along for years with major problems from worn out equipment, minimal staffing, and bare bones maintenance issues that must be addressed for liability's sake as well as for tourism. You're sitting on what could be a solution and a windfall to upgrade and bring our parks back to the grandeur our state is known for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sorry we couldn't see your face, but we appreciate you being here.
Don't know what happened.
Any questions for Ms. Mullen from the panelists? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Gina Morin and then Eliza Townsend.
I can't seem to get my video working.
That's okay.
I mean, oh, I think I might have gotten it. Thank you. Senator Breen, Representative Pierce, and honorable members of the committee. My name is Gina Morin. I am a resident of Auburn, and I am here today to urge you to include LD 1656, an act to promote energy efficient, affordable housing, and LD 1733, and fund it using federal recovery funds and eligible use according to the guidance of the U.S. Treasury. We have three interconnected problems that hurt everyone in Maine: a housing shortage, labor crisis, and the climate change crisis. We also have a unique opportunity to take advantage of federal funds for affordable housing. This housing bill will address all three in one bill. I have grandchildren who don't deserve to inherit a climate crisis when we can start fighting it today. If we wait for future generations, it'll be too late. We also need a skilled workforce with good paying jobs and benefits to incentivize younger generations to stay here in Maine. This will also grow Maine's economy. In 2016, I was forced out of my home and lived in my car for 10 days. I struggled to eat and keep warm. After that, I rented a motel room where I lived for the next 4.5 years. Living in a motel isn't a picnic, and it's much easier than living in a car, but it was still awful. Late last year, I found an apartment I could rent. My apartment has changed my life. I'm actually living again, not just existing. I'm so grateful. No Mainer should be living in a motel. We need safe, affordable housing. I appreciate your consideration and hope you will add the funding for LD 1656 to LD 1733 so folks like me can start living again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Moran. Any questions for Ms. Moran from the committee? Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us. Next is Eliza Townsend, and then we're going to go to Dean Martin. Ms. Townsend, go right ahead.
Thank you, Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and distinguished members of the Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. I am Eliza Townsend, Maine Conservation Policy Director for the Appalachian Mountain Club. AMC is the nation's oldest conservation, recreation, and education organization with the mission to foster the protection, enjoyment, and understanding of the outdoors. We have 6,500 members in Maine and own 75,000 acres of forest land in the 100-mile wilderness region of Piscataquis County, which we manage for multiple use, including sustainable forestry, backcountry recreation, and environmental education. AMC harvests between 6,000 and 7,000 cords of lumber annually using local loggers. Like all Maine forest owners, we were deeply affected by the events of 2020, including both the pandemic and the explosion at the J Mill. The high retail prices for lumber have not trickled down to benefit landowners, and we have had to scramble to adapt our harvest plans to meet current conditions and to make budget. We strongly support the proposal to allocate funds to drive research and development and to create new markets for Maine's forest products industry and Maine's forests, which is critical to mitigating and adapting to climate change. Further, everyone needs to get outside to cool off, to enjoy fresh air, relax, clear our heads, enjoy scenery, and connect with nature, be physically active, or just sit and read and think. Located throughout the state, our state parks make that opportunity available to everyone at a low cost. Truly, they are special places. In 2020, a record 3 million people turned to them as they sought to relieve stress and to vacation in a budget-conscious way. Those visitors contribute an estimated $100 million to our economy annually, dollars that are vital to the rural communities where most of the parks are located. This rediscovery of the benefits of outdoor recreation is wonderful. It has sparked unprecedented sales of outdoor equipment and brought more money into the state coffers in the form of park entrance fees and sales taxes. In a February article, several new residents told the Bangor Daily News that access to the outdoor activities was a factor in their decision to relocate here. At the same time, the surge of use has put new pressures on infrastructure that has been sorely in need of repair or replacement for a very long time. The last sizable investment in the parks was more than a decade ago, and an estimated backlog of at least $50 million of needed repairs has accumulated. Challenges range from facilities that are out of date to unsightly, damaged, and leaking buildings to major safety concerns. We can and must do better. Investing in our state parks is first and foremost a matter of public safety and is our responsibility. In addition, it will improve the visitor experience, make the parks more welcoming to people of all ages and abilities, and provide for better working conditions for the staff. Investing in our state parks will demonstrate self-respect and regard for all users. Millions of Americans have taken up outdoor activities in the past year. As the pandemic eases and travel restrictions are lifted, they have a choice about where to spend their budget for recreation and for leisure. Visitors from southern New England make up the majority of our tourists, but they can travel to Vermont, New Hampshire, and soon Canada as easily as to Maine. We would be wise to invest in our state parks and historic sites to ensure that we continue to offer a top-notch experience and meet the expectations of today's visitors. I would be remiss if I did not.
Your time is up, so if you might summarize. Thank you, Ms. Townsend.
Just add that I just want to remind the committee that last year you considered a proposal to restore 24 positions to the state parks that had been cut a few years back. I was very sorry to see that they did not make it into this year's proposed budget. We're risking the well-being of not only our visitors, but also our staff. And this situation is not sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Townsend? Okay, thank you for your patience and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin.
Oh, yes, thanks. Thanks for having me. I just lost my write-up. I apologize. I'm the director over at Friends of Fort Knox, and I just lost my write-up. I apologize. There we go. So good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Pierce, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Dean Martin, and my parents were fans, and I don't sing very well. I'm testifying today on behalf of the Friends of Fort Knox in strong support of the proposed legislation for LD 1733, specifically the provision of $50 million for state parks and historic sites. I'm the executive director of Friends of Fort Knox, a 501c3 that manages Fort Knox Historic Site in Waldo County and Penobscot Narrows Bridge Observatory in Hancock and Waldo County under lease agreements with the state. The Friends of Fort Knox came into being about 30 years ago when the Friends founders and the people of Maine voted for a state referendum to save the fort after raising more than $4 million in the early 90s. As an attraction in Midcoast Maine, Fort Knox and the observatory see over 100,000 guests a year, almost half of which visit in July and August. Anyone who's visited Fort Knox in the past 25 years will notice the continuous improvements and access to areas that have become dilapidated and dangerous. The crucial infusion of funding provided at an essential time made Fort Knox Historic Site a centerpiece and destination of Midcoast Maine, while ensuring the mission to preserve Fort Knox for future generations was realized. Other state parks and historic sites are in serious need, as was said by Eliza and Margaret before me. They need increased funds just to operate at status quo. We know maintaining our yards and houses is expensive, but an appropriate state park budget with staff to support it properly is a few orders of magnitude higher. Even with the help of nonprofits and volunteers, state parks and historic sites require substantial funding to maintain the parks that are representative of Maine and essential to Maine tourism's industry. Maine state parks welcome persons of all race, color, creed, religions, and orientation. They are the homes of habitat to wildlife, woods, and waters that is Maine unplugged. Our parks are the face of Maine for visitors, in addition to potential to being a revenue generator. Post-COVID, there's been a huge surge of visitors coming to Maine state parks. Only after only 1 month in 2021, this past May has seen the most attended in almost a decade. The sales of Maine State Park passes have been higher this year than anticipated. Local businesses such as hotels and restaurants have seen increased revenues, and by direct connection, so has the state of Maine through associated taxes on businesses, gas and groceries, etc. In closing, I recommend that you all make time this summer to visit a state park near you and see for yourselves how your funding will help this park system that is long overdue. The provision and release as soon as possible through LD 1733 will return our state parks and historic sites back to being the destination centers most of you remember from your childhood. If you do come visit Fort Knox, I may actually break into song, but thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. Thank you for keeping it light at this late hour. We appreciate it.
Sure.
Any questions for Mr. Martin from the panel? No. Okay. Next we have Heather Martin and then Judith East and then Bill. Next we have Sandy Buchanan and then Heather Martin and then Judith East and then Bill Norbert.
Good evening. Senator Breen, Representative Pierce, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. My name is Sandy Buchanan, and I am the General Manager for Western Maine Transportation Services. I offer this testimony in my capacity as the President for the Maine Transit Association, which includes regional transit providers throughout the state. I am here today to ask for your support for LD 1733, and particularly for $5 million state investment in public transportation for Maine workers, which is on page 28 of the AFA plan for Maine. These funds would be used to develop ways to address the critical needs for workforce transportation in Maine with a focus on our rural areas. The rural parts of the state often have little or no transit service and dispersed populations. Employers must pull from a large area to find workers, while many workers and potential workers lack reliable access to and from job opportunities. Existing services are often expensive or leave large gaps. Finding innovative and cost-effective ways to provide reliable transportation options will help rural Maine workers and employers. These may include small bus routes, van pools, ride sharing, or other creative approaches. Examples include the seasonal Mountain Express that provides transportation from Dixville, Mexico, and Rumford to Sunday River area employers, and Sugarloaf Express that provides employee transportation from Farmington to Sugarloaf. The year-round Blue Line provides employee transportation between Lewiston, Auburn to Bath, which has enabled a number of new Mainers to access work with a small business in the food industry. These and other best practices from around the country could serve as models for other projects in the state. Our public transit industry needs additional workers to operate and maintain our transit vehicles. Other areas of this legislation discuss the need to build career paths and connect workers to job opportunities in the state. Maine has few resources for public transportation, and we have many needs to address. If we are going to make these services available for people throughout Maine, providing reliable transportation for current and potential workers to connect to employers in rural Maine helps our economy, our people, and our communities. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Ms. Buchanan from any committee members? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your patience. Next is Heather Martin, and then Judith East, and then Bill Norbert.
Hello, thank you. I hear it's quite hot at the State House, so thanks for sweating this out today. Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, and honorable members of the committee, my name is Heather Martin, and I am testifying on behalf of the Maine Association for the Education of Young Children and the Family Child Care Association of Maine. We are in favor of the funding proposals for early care and education, including $10 million in public pre-K expansion and $10 million in child care infrastructure in LD 1733. As you all know, we have an immense opportunity to reimagine childcare in Maine after the pandemic has left some programs permanently closed, others struggling to remain open, our childcare workforce depleted, and families unable to access childcare slots. LD 1733 begins to address accessibility of the early care and education programs, and if partnered with investments in childcare workforce and programming, Maine can start to build a better and stronger childcare system. We support childcare as infrastructure and as an essential function of Maine's economy, with 70% of children under 6 having all available parents in the workforce prior to the pandemic. Childcare was not a luxury to families, it was a necessity, and it still is. Having quality childcare programs allows parents and guardians to work while providing children with safe places to be cared for, as well as support for their cognitive, physical, and emotional development. To view childcare as infrastructure needs to go beyond the walls of the program. It means to invest in the people providing the care and education as the hardworking professionals they are. LD 1733's childcare funding initiatives can be complementary to build our childcare infrastructure when combined with initiatives like LD 1652, an act to build a childcare system by recruiting and retaining Maine's early childhood educators workforce. We also support high-quality public-funded pre-K as part of a mixed delivery early care and educational system in Maine. It's important to remember that public pre-K does not have to occur within the walls of a public school. We need to continue to help districts form contracts with existing learning programs who want to participate, where public investment flows into family childcare and center-based programs. This helps ensure that early care and education for infants and toddlers is preserved, and it gives parents a choice in their children's care and educational needs. Childcare programs are already structured to support the education and care of 4-year-olds and will be a primary factor in allowing for more children to access public pre-K opportunities. Working families often need pre-K programming that are 5 full days a week with extended day options. For pre-K to be accessible to more children, we must ensure that this is an option and childcare programs can contribute to the success of this model. Children birth to 3 need to be factored into these partnerships as their early learning experiences play a large role in their school readiness when entering the public school system. Childcare programs need resources that support the development of children from birth on up. LD 1712, an act to support children's healthy development and school success, is another important piece to ensure that our early childhood system is supported. We ask you to support the funding proposal of $20 million for childcare infrastructure and public pre-K expansion in this bill. In addition, we encourage you to use a small portion of the federal relief funds or pending supplemental budget to fund LD 1652 to support the childcare workforce and LD 1712 to support resources for families and programs in childcare. Thank you so much and happy to answer any questions. And stay cool.
Thank you very much, Ms. Martin. We appreciate it. Any questions for Ms. Martin from the committee? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you for your patience and thank you for being here. Next is Judith East.
Good afternoon, Senator Breen, Representative Pierce, and honorable members of the Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs. I'm Judy East, Executive Director of the Land Use Planning Commission, but I'd like to clarify that my comments today are with a different hat on. That's my day job, but I was a member of the Maine Climate Council and co-chair of the Community Resilience Planning, Public Health and Emergency Management Working Group. And in that capacity, I strongly support 3 allocations in LD 1733 to facilitate investments in climate resilient infrastructure, as recommended in the Maine Won't Wait Climate Action Plan. And those are to protect infrastructure from climate change, 20 million, ensure the safety of drinking water, 25 million, and repair wastewater infrastructure at 25 million. Creation of an infrastructure climate adaptation fund was a singular and critical recommendation of our working group. For 25 years, the National Institute of Building Sciences has been performing and evaluating the results of disaster dollars avoided through use of pre-disaster mitigation investments. Their results consistently show that for every dollar invested in this kind of resilient infrastructure, they call it disaster mitigation, results in $6 of avoided disaster damages. We provide detailed information in our working group reports on the extent, need, and priority investments for transportation, wastewater, and drinking water that is at risk to the impacts of climate change, particularly along the coast. So everyone recognizes that funding resilient infrastructure will be expensive. However, as sea levels continue to rise and as high intensity precipitation events continue to get stronger and more frequent, as documented in the Science and Technical Committee report that contributed to the work of the Climate Council, this data on saving $6 when you invest $1 makes it abundantly clear that these investments in resilience will cost far less than responding to repetitive and increasing climate impacts. Another element of this proposal in the Climate Infrastructure Adaptation Fund designates a portion of the 20 million to pay for design and project development costs. Putting a different hat on, a former hat that I held for 17 years as Executive Director of the Washington County Council of Governments, I assisted numerous municipalities in preparing grant applications to repair and rebuild wastewater and drinking water infrastructure. You heard about some of the need of that from earlier speakers, and more recently in the assessment of their needs around climate resilience. So the provision of funding in this adaptation fund to pay for the scoping and design of this kind of infrastructure is really essential for small municipalities to get in that game. They need to demonstrate precisely what they need, how much it will cost, and then to assemble the cost benefit formulas that are required by funding agencies. So finally, leverage is essential to secure funding, whether it's public or nonprofit. So this adaptation fund would provide local matching funds to enable municipalities and state agencies to leverage local and county funds they receive through that they will receive through the American Rescue Plan, and to access certain types of federal dollars, such as community development block grants, and hopefully others that remains to be seen. So I urge you to vote to pass on those specific provisions, and happy to answer any questions. And thank you for hanging in there for all of this.
Thank you for hanging in there with us. We appreciate it. Any questions for Ms. East? All right. Thank you for all the many hats you wear. All right. And I think our cleanup hitter this evening is none other than our friendly gentleman from the Finance Authority of Maine, Bill Norbert. Bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. What a great honor. I know it's been a very long afternoon, so I will abbreviate my testimony. Senator Breen, Representative Peirce, distinguished members of the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee. My name is Bill Norbert, and I am the Government Affairs Manager at the Finance Authority of Maine. And I want to speak in support of 2 provisions of this bill. Part A, which is related to business assistance, and Part H, which involves a loan repayment program for healthcare providers. FAME supports these initiatives, and we really appreciate their inclusion in the governor's proposal. The first initiative related to business assistance, it can be found on page 2 of the document provided, and this provides one-time funding of $33.4 million in fiscal year 21-22 and $15 million in funding in FY 22-23 to provide loans and loan guarantees through FAME for businesses having difficulty securing investment capital during the pandemic. This is designed to get money out in the street now. This is part of the immediate reach of this plan to help our businesses recover. It also provides funding for the Maine Rural Development Authority, with whom we partner. We provide fund administration and underwriting services for them. And you might remember the Maine Rural Development Authority is really targeted toward providing development in the rural parts of Maine, especially with commercial and industrial buildings, to help redevelop them or develop them. And so we would be pleased to help with that. We plan to use these funds to broaden our small business loan and loan guarantees to support lending made by our local lenders in the state. This is all contemplated by the Economic Recovery Committee. You can see in my testimony, there is language in there where the ERC recommended such funds, and they can make a really big impact. They have in the past, they have during the pandemic, and they will now. I want to toggle over to the loan repayment testimony. I submitted a second separate testimony regarding $1 million in one-time funding. This is in Part H, and this would have FAME pilot a Maine healthcare provider loan repayment program to make loan repayments to eligible participants to address the workforce shortages exacerbated by the pandemic. We would adopt routine technical rules to carry this out, and we would set parameters for applicants and eligibility. The program would sunset when the funds are expended or by December 31st, 2024, whichever comes first. I think you all know that we are familiar with administering loan and loan repayment programs. They can really help with our workforce needs. The program contemplated here would be a 3-year program, $25,000 each, $75,000 total per participant, so long as they commit to living and working in Maine in these healthcare provider professions. So that's the general overall approach. I want to thank you all for your attention and your hard work, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Norbert.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate you hanging in there with us. Any questions for Mr. Norbert from the committee? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Have a good evening.
Thank you for listening. You too.
All right. Well, I think that concludes, well, that does conclude our public hearing on LD 1733. Thank you all for joining us, and we will be doing our future voting work sessions in our committee room. So I think this could be the last time we meet on Zoom. Anything from my co-chair or from our analysts before we wrap up for the evening?
No, it's a little bittersweet to be leaving Zoom, but I appreciate seeing everybody in the room.
Thank you for your excellent help and timing. Maureen, anything we need to be doing?
Not at the moment. Maybe resting and drinking some water.
Well, this house has to go back and do some voting. So I think